All right. Finally made it. Finally made it. What am I? 2 weeks and 20 minutes late. But I am here. What is up, everybody? Finally made it. What am I? Oh man. If I told you the last freaking 2 weeks I had, boy, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't fucking believe it. But anyway, we're here, we're live, and well, I got to get back on my job because my other job has been consuming so much of my life that I haven't really been able to really sit down and put any shows together. Now, I have actually put some shows together, but so much time has passed since I put those slides together. It's like there's no point. Everybody done talked about the shit already. So what the fuck? Like, what am I gonna say now? You know what I mean? But nevertheless, no time for music because we're just getting started. So and we were already late. So I'm not gonna waste any more time with that. But why was the anti-Trump movement started in the first place? Well, it's very simple. The anti-Trump movement was started to maintain the profit margins of the political puppets and players who have been gaming the system for decades, for as long as we've been alive. You see, what's been happening was when the American system was created, when the constitutional republic was created, the intent behind the creation of it was so that every American citizen, although slaves at the time weren't considered citizens, once slavery ended and the 14th Amendment was ratified and slavery was abolished and whatnot, and birthright citizenship was afforded to all Americans, including the former slaves and the children of slaves, all American citizens were supposed to be able to have a fair shot at wealth and success and having fair input in their political process by way of their votes, by voting for their representation. But what happened is over time, a group of individuals saw an opportunity to infiltrate the system, rewrite the Constitution, make certain subtle changes, and basically set up a system where only a select few can succeed. And it would be on the backs of everyone else. This is what Q means when they talk about modern day slavery on the backs of the people. And the anti-Trump movement was essentially created to maintain that system of modern day slavery on the backs of the people. This is why, unlike any other president in US history, Trump has always Trump actually addressed the rigged voting system, right? That's one big example. The way these players rigged the system in order to game it for themselves was they rigged the voting system. They essentially took away the people's right to choose their own representatives, and through the political party leadership, the political parties then began to choose who they wanted to represent the people, regardless of how the people felt. A prime example of this, I could give you two prime examples. Both women that we had for Democratic candidates for president, they did that with, didn't they? Hillary Clinton, 2016. Think about that. During the 2016 primary, the only Democrat that stood a chance against Donald Trump was Bernie Sanders. Believe it or not, as kooky and crazy as he was actually getting more support from the people than Hillary was. More Democratic voters were in support of Bernie Sanders than they were in support of Hillary Clinton. But because the DNC was going broke, what happened? Hillary Clinton came in, and Donna Brazile, who was the former DNC chair, when she made these comments on MSNBC, she admitted this. Hillary Clinton came in and offered to fund the local Democratic candidates across the country by funding the DNC because they were broke and they couldn't provide the funding. And they, in exchange for Hillary Clinton funding the DNC, they made a deal with her that she would be made, they would change the rules and she would be made their Democratic candidate for president, regardless of the people's votes. So as the Democratic voters turned out in droves to cast their ballots in the Democratic primary of 2016, and they were casting their ballots for Bernie Sanders en masse, the Democratic Party then changed the rules and made it to where this select group of individuals they called super delegates, which is unconstitutional, had never existed in American politics before this. The super delegates overrode the votes of the people, which the delegates would have legally been, who would have been legally bound to. And they installed these super delegates to override the votes of the people and make Hillary Clinton their Democratic candidate, their candidate, their nominee for president. So there's a prime example of how they rigged the system in order to put themselves in power. And the reason why they wanted to put themselves in power so desperately was simply to expand their profit margins, to expand their profitability, expand their slush fund programs. You see? So in Donald Trump coming in 2016 and winning the election and basically giving Hillary the boot, it threw a whole monkey wrench in their plan. It upset the whole balance because their normal game of rigging the primaries and rigging the election system to get their own puppets in place, that had been undermined. And what undermined it was Donald Trump's sheer popularity. Donald Trump had a 15% new voter, first-time voter turnout, which beat Obama's 9% first-time voter turnout, which made it to where the rigging of the election system between Hillary and Trump was basically Hillary didn't stand a chance. The votes of the people was enough to overwhelm the fraud that they had put in place to ensure that Hillary would beat Trump. Because remember, up until Obama, they had never had more than a 5 or 6% first-time voter turnout every election. And then when Obama came along and he broke the record with a 9% first-time voter turnout, the Democratic Party and the Rhino sellout Republicans who were down with the shillings, they only accounted, with their amount of fraud, they only accounted for an override of 9%. So they only had to rig the elections to overcome no more than 9% new voters in order to make sure that Hillary won. But that other 6% that kind of came out of nowhere in support of Trump superseded the fraud. It superseded the 9%. So their election fraud plan, their election fraud scheme failed. And that was step one to upsetting the balance. Trump winning the presidency, because that pushed back their plans to run the scamdemic and then do the depopulation thing with the mass murder and the vaccines and all that for another 4 years. And they had to wait till 2020 to try to run that play because they no longer had Hillary and they no longer had their puppet Hillary in position to execute the orders that would have been necessary to force the vaccine on people, lock down the economy, and do everything that the establishment did in 2020, which was being combated by Donald Trump the whole time. Now, the second instance of the gaming of the system in order to ensure that their players remained in power, it came in the 2024 elections, right? When Biden was the president, allegedly, from 2020 to 2024, and Kamala Harris was the vice president. No Democratic primary was held, and Kamala Harris, because Biden was supposed to be, because normally it's the incumbent president that becomes the excuse me, the party candidate in the next election, since it was only Biden's first term. So instead of having a primary and having the people vote, they just decided, the Democratic Party just decided, hey, let's throw Kamala Harris up there. So they threw Kamala Harris up there, and they try to lie and say she was a black woman and all this shit. She never answered any questions. She was just totally unfit and unprepared for that level of publicity and responsibility. And she basically dropped the ball because she couldn't hold a candle to Trump. But what happened between 2020 and 2024 was the establishment's last ditch attempt at reestablishing their foothold, their stronghold of control of the American system. This is why the borders were open and so many illegals were allowed to flood in such large numbers. Because what was happening was a lot of liberal voters in these big cities, excuse me, were becoming disillusioned with the Democratic Party that have been running their cities into the ground for generations. They were being overrun with the crime. They were being overrun with poverty. They were being overrun with police brutality and tyranny. And now they're starting to be overrun with illegals. And the reason why the Democrats were bringing in the illegals was because they were creating the new slave class. And the reason why they needed a new slave class is because after the first 4 years of Donald Trump and all the shit that he exposed about the Democratic Party and the government as a whole, a lot of people started to become disillusioned with establishment puppets. And the Democratic Party in particular could no longer depend on the votes of American citizens to keep them in power. So they had to bring in a foreign population who didn't know shit about American politics, and they had to bribe them with taxpayer funding in order to get them on the Democratic plantation. And this is why they were giving them so much money, and they were also attempting to give them voting rights. They were creating a new slave class. And the numbers reflected the decline in Democratic support after the 2024 elections, because Kamala Harris did not get the overwhelming, excuse me, well, she did get the overwhelming majority of black votes, but she didn't get the super majority of black votes like the standard Democrat normally would. Most times the Democrats would get, whether it was a male or a female, the Democratic presidential candidate would normally get at least 94 to 96%, maybe even 97% of the black vote in some instances. That includes black men and women. The black male vote would be around 92 or 93%. The black female vote would be around 95 to 97%. And what happened by 2024 was the black male vote for the Democrats had declined so significantly that it dropped from the 90s to the 80s. I think it was about 85% of the black male vote. So the evidence was there that the Democratic Party was starting to lose the support of their black voters. And in order to maintain their voter base, they needed a foreign population to flood into the country, again, who didn't know enough about American politics to see the game that the Democrats were playing. But that too failed, thanks to Donald Trump, because the Republicans who were in office that Donald Trump had previously endorsed, in their states and in their cities, they were not doing the sanctuary city thing, and they were not trying to allow illegals to come flood into their cities, and they damn sure weren't about to give these illegals voting rights. So the whole purpose for the anti-Trump movement, it was started to make sure that nobody could get into political office and essentially shake things up or change the status quo, so to speak, change the game. You see? And because Trump was addressing the election fraud, which was basically hampering the progress of their political puppets seizing power, not only was he doing that, but he was exposing the corruption, he was exposing the crime, he was reminding the American people that these so-called undocumented citizens, or whoever whatever they wanted to call them. What up, Divine Gun? What up, Mike Hill? What up, Kevin Barnes? Everybody, appreciate y'all. Official Truth Seeker, appreciate y'all being here. They wanted to ensure that nobody would get into power that would upset the balance, so to speak, right? So by addressing the voting situation, it hampered the ability of these political puppets to seize power. By exposing the corruption, it hampered the ability of these political puppets to continue pushing their deception that they're operating in the best interest of the American people. By pointing out these so-called undocumented immigrants, or whatever the fuck they want to call them, by constantly reminding the American people that these were illegal aliens that shouldn't be in our country, it was hampering their ability to replace the American electorate. You see? So because of all of these monkey wrenches that Trump was throwing in their plans, they had to find a way to turn the people against them. So what did they do? They started calling him racist, right? And that was their appeal to the black voters. If we can call him racist, we know black people respond very predictably. Predict predictably. What would be the word? Predictably? Their response to racism is very predictable. They're very sensitive to the whole race thing. So if we call him a racist, that will be our appeal to the black electorate. And for the white people, they started calling him a fascist and a Nazi and every other name that they called him. And this is because they needed to have the American people turn against Trump, but they couldn't use any. Yeah, very predictable. Thank you, Divine Gun. They couldn't use anything that he was doing legitimately to criticize him on, because everything that he was doing was in favor of America, cutting taxes, wanting to secure the border, shutting down the criminals and the crime, declaring Antifa a terrorist organization, that type of shit. You know what I'm saying? So they had to find a way to. I mean, it was basically basically what happened was, it was the classic, if I can't defeat you on the intellectual arguments, I'm going to use ad hominems. And they couldn't defeat Trump on the intellectual arguments, because Trump's intellectual arguments were foolproof. Who wouldn't want lower taxes? Who wouldn't want lower crime? Who wouldn't want secure borders for their country? Who wouldn't want safe cities? Who wouldn't want clean elections, right? So they couldn't argue with him about that. So they had to turn to the ad hominems and demonize him in order to get people to hate him. And not only did they utilize mainstream media, as they're still doing today, but they are also utilizing their agents through Defeat This Info on YouTube and other social media platforms to demonize Trump as well. This is why Brother Sanchez does all his communist rants where he tells people capitalism is about rich people trying to figure out how to get over on poor people, when it's actually the opposite. Capitalism is actually about poor people getting over on rich people. Because a lot of the rich capitalists out there, they started as poor people. And thanks to capitalism, they were able to get rich. Take for example, like this is like, and this is the demonization of capitalism. It's a play to communism, and this is why the establishment needed those puppets in place, because they wanted to create a communistic system. Because in communism, what happens is the government controls all the resources in order to distribute them evenly amongst the people. This is the theory behind communism, right? Where the government controls all the resources, and the government has to be noble and benevolent enough to equally distribute all the resources to make sure everybody gets a fair shot, everybody gets a fair shake. But because governmental systems are ran by people and people are corruptible, communism never works, because once you give the government control of all the resources, the even distribution part never really happens. And this is why they hated Trump so much, because Trump's a capitalist. And this is why they use their agents online and their shills in the media to demonize capitalism and sell this idea of communism. You see? Because capitalism works like this. You got a young man, he's broke, he ain't got nothing. He's starting off fresh, but he's got some skills. He knows how to build shit, he knows how to fix shit. So what does he do? He starts a handyman business or something, right? He starts a maintenance business and he starts soliciting clientele. Well, who are normally the people that have extra money to spend to renovate their homes because they feel like it, or renovate their landscape because they feel like it, or pay somebody to come fix something that they could learn how to fix themselves? The wealthier people, the people who have already reached the top of the economic ladder, right? So the people at the bottom, if they can create a product or a service that they can then market to the people at the higher levels of the economic ladder. Oh yeah, Lord Spike. Yeah, we're getting to that. Definitely getting to that. Shout out to you. Appreciate you being here, by the way. So the young man that's got nothing but some skills, some products, or some, like, how about this? Here's a better example. Drug dealing. That's capitalism. Most big time drug dealers, every big time drug lord in the country that has existed in American history, right? If you ever watched the American Gangster series or whatever, where they talk about these big gangsters and shit, when you look at their backgrounds and their histories, 90% of them grew up poor in poverty, and that's what got them into drug dealing in the first place. And who are they selling their drugs to? They were selling their drugs to people who had money to buy their drugs. A lot of times they were selling cocaine, like Freeway Ricky Ross, for example. He wasn't selling cocaine to poor, broke people in the hood. He was selling cocaine to rich white people that came to the hood to buy the cocaine. That's capitalism. So capitalism, so what these communists would tell you capitalism is, which they say is capitalism is rich people getting over on the poor people. No, it's actually the poor people getting over on the rich people, really. Because if you have a product or a service that's marketable that rich people want, they'll pay you for it. And if you get enough rich people to pay you for your products or your services, guess what happens? You go from being poor to being rich. That's how capitalism works. That's capitalism. But these communists, they'll sell you everything in reverse, because not only are they communists, but they're Satanists. See, communism and Satanism goes hand in hand, because communism is based on the deception of, oh, give us control of everything and we'll make sure you get a fair shot. And the deception is, give us control of everything, because that's what they want, full control. They don't care about giving anybody a fair shot. What they really care about is having full control, right? But capitalism is about, give me your best and your brightest and we'll elevate them. People make they will make their bones based off merit, not based off what somebody else says they deserve. Capitalism is about who's smart enough to come up with good ideas and hardworking enough to put in the time and the effort and the energy into what's necessary to make it happen. And this is why in America, they're able to sell communism to the American people because, as a whole, Americans are fucking lazy. And this is why it's so easy to sell communism to Americans because they're lazy as shit. Most Americans, they want everything ready made. Most Americans want everything hand delivered. Most Americans want everything plug and play. And they don't want to put in the time and the effort to learn how to do shit. This is why a handyman business or being a plumber is so lucrative and so profitable. This is why being a landscaper can be so lucrative and so profitable because there's plenty of rich people out there who don't want to put in the time and the energy to learn how to do that shit themselves. And they'd rather just spend the money because they got it and let somebody else do the hard back-breaking work. You see what I'm saying? But that's how capitalism works, because what happens is that young man that starts from the bottom and sells his products or his services to enough rich people to make himself rich, what he can do now is scale his company up and hire other young people who have nothing and are starting from zero and put them to do the work for him. And he now capitalizes off of their labor. But he was the one that bought all the equipment. He was the one that put in all the effort in the beginning. He was the one that built up the clientele. You see what I'm saying? So he has now earned his position as the boss. He has now earned his spot to be in charge of shit and run shit and put these other guys to work. So it's not him as the owner of the company getting over on his employees. He's actually giving his employees an opportunity to, one, earn money, which they probably wouldn't have without him. Two, an opportunity to learn a business and learn a skill, which they wouldn't have without him. And three, an opportunity to actually someday become his competition. And to succeed in capitalism, you have to possess two qualities. Aside from having good product to put out on the street, you have to be smart, which means you have to know how to market and who to market to. And you have to work hard, which means you got to make those runs. You got to make those sales. You got to make those re-ups. You know what I'm saying? You got to work hard at it. And if you're lacking any one of those qualities, you're going to end up at the bottom. And this is why there's so many Americans in the land of opportunity at the bottom of the economic scale. And all they do is listen to a bunch of communists fill their heads with bullshit and make them believe that life's supposed to be free and life ain't fair because they got to pay their own way. And the reason why they're at the bottom is because, one, they probably smart as hell and have great ideas, but they're lazy fucks and they don't execute. Or they work hard as fuck, but they're stupid. So instead of working for that company, learning the trade, learning the skill, and eventually learning how to compete on their own, they get comfortable with the paycheck because they're afraid to get out there and do that hard work to earn their own money. You see what I'm saying? So they're either lazy or they're stupid. You see? You only have to be one of those to stay at the bottom. That's why there's so many smart poor people. That's why there's so many hardworking poor people. You see what I'm saying? But you'd be hard pressed to find smart, hardworking poor people. Because the smart, hardworking people, they don't stay poor in America very long. They either make it to the middle class or beyond. This is why the public school system was designed to dumb the students down, because they want them to be hard workers, but they don't want them to be smart. Hang on a second. My Rumble phone is fucking up. Hold on. You see? They want you to be stupid. They want you to work hard, which will make you a good slave, but they want you to be stupid, which makes you a permanent slave. And you see, Donald Trump is he's the opposite of that. Donald Trump is smart and he works hard. You see what I'm saying? And so was his father. Fred Trump was smart and he worked hard, and he instilled those values in his son. And not only that, but he gave his son a head start, because through his smarts and his hard work, he was able to leave $1 million for his son. And his son was actually able to capitalize on that $1 million. You see what I'm saying? Because his son learned hard. He learned the value of hard work, and he also learned the value of being fucking smart. Like, I'll give you an example of how lacking one of those qualities will destroy your success. And I love my father to death. My father has been my hero for my entire life. I admire my father. Everything I know about my line of work, I learned from my father. My work ethic, I got from my father. And my father is a very smart man. He's a very brilliant man. But he wasn't smart enough to know how to, he made it to the top, but he wasn't smart enough to know how to stay at the top. And he's a very hardworking man, and I always admired him for that. And he taught me hard work, just like Trump's dad taught him. My dad made $1 million on a contract I was working with him on. Sorry. And within 2 to 3 years, that $1 million was squandered and everything was lost. And he ended up with less than what he had before he made the $1 million. And you know why? Because some bullshit happened between him and my mom. They got a divorce. He got in his feelings and he started making dumb decisions. He started making bad decisions. And in making those bad decisions, those emotional decisions, he stopped making the smart decisions that he was making prior to that. And once he stopped doing the smart shit and started doing dumb shit, he lost everything. But when he was working hard and he was being smart about it, he gained everything. You see what I'm saying? So he learned how to make $1 million. He didn't learn how to expand and how to keep $1 million. And Donald Trump is the embodiment of American capitalism. Donald Trump is basically the top tier example of where capitalism can take you as an American. But of course, not every American is going to ever be able to be Donald Trump, right? But a lot of us can get pretty close to it, and many of us have. And many of us have in our own right. And when you look back on what it took for you to get there, to get to that level of success, it may not be the pinnacle of success. It may not be the level of success that you're ready to, sit back and retire at and start delegating your responsibilities at that point. But you made it farther than you were. You made it farther than, you've exceeded the level you were at when you graduated high school or graduated college. Let's just say that. And when you look back at the decisions that you made and the things that you chose to do, there's a common theme there. The decisions that you made were the smart decisions. When your homeboys say, yo, come jump in the whip, let's go spin the block on these niggas. Guess what? You said, you know what? I'm not doing that because I don't want to go to jail. That was a smart decision. So you escaped jail and you were able to stay free and continue working on your goals, right? And those times when Your business wasn't going as well as you thought it would go, or you were encountering roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and you felt like giving up. And you felt like, damn, man, I got to work so hard just to break even, but you kept working. So you stayed dedicated. You remained loyal to your goal. So you worked hard and you finally made it. You succeeded. You see? So the two things, the two qualities that you possess that you probably didn't even realize that you were doing was being smart and working hard. And that's what capitalism is about. But you see, the people that tell you capitalism is a bad thing, these are the people that want you to stay at the bottom. These are the people that want you to remain a slave. These are the people that want you to stay stupid so you stay poor. Because as long as you stay poor, you remain dependent on them. And as long as you're dependent on them, they can control you. Look at how many people lined up to take that fucking bioweapon vaccine, that bioweapon shot in 2021 because they were afraid to lose their job. How were they able to get so many? How were they able to coerce so many people into sacrificing their health? Because they were able to convince these people that there was nothing else more important in life than your job. Your job was even more important than your life, is essentially what they've convinced these people of. And how were they able to convince these people of that? Because these people were kept stupid. Many of them are good people and they work hard, but they were too stupid to figure out a way to make it on their own. So they stayed complacent and dependent on their employers. So they were working hard, but they were working hard for the wrong people. You see what I'm saying? Or how about the lazy people that were, you know, too lazy to go out there and get it on their own? They liked the paycheck. They liked the comforts of having a good job. And they didn't want to sacrifice that good job. So they sacrificed their own health and their own lives. You see what I'm saying? Being stupid and being lazy. They kept them at the bottom through their stupidity and their laziness, and they were able to control them to the point where they got them to sacrifice their own fucking lives. And these same people that will tell you communism is the greatest shit in the world and it's a better alternative to capitalism, what they won't tell you is go look at how successful communism has been in Venezuela, where people were eating out of trash cans. Go look at how successful communism has worked for the Bolsheviks in Russia. Go look at how successful communism worked in North Korea, where people have to use human feces. Yes, complicit. No, complacent. Complicit means being basically involved in a crime. Complacent means being comfortable and not wanting to elevate. So it's actually complacent is the word I was looking for, Lord Spike. But I appreciate you chiming in on that. But you see, because Donald Trump is the embodiment of American capitalism, when he came on the scene, he gave the American people who were smart and hardworking, he gave them a semblance of hope that, you know what? I'm going to fix this system and I'm going to de-rig this system so you won't be punished for your smart decisions. And you won't be exploited because you're hardworking. You're actually going to be rewarded based on merit. And the communists that run this country, they did not want that. They did not want the American people to see past their paychecks. They did not want the American people to see that there was a whole nother world of opportunity out there besides what we were being presented with. Because all we've been presented with and Divine Gun, I'm glad you said that. He says that shit was real. I don't fuck with any of these systems, to be honest. Ours is a mix of capitalism and an oligarchy or whatever and whatever else. You see, our system. Well, let me address what Divine Gun said, because that's more important. Because that's more to the point. You see, when America started, it was based in capitalism. They weren't many the biggest corporations. The biggest corporation in America was the East India Trading Company that had a hand in slavery, right? But as far as the day-to-day business transactions between free people in America, it was capitalism. Everybody produced something and everybody had something to offer and something to trade, whether it was labor, it was skills, it was raw materials, it was manufactured materials, whatever. Everybody had something to bring to the table and everybody was able to eat. But what happened is a few oligarchs, a few companies started to rise to the top. And the few oligarchs that made it to the top of the economic ladder then started to rig the rules to where they got to choose the winners and the losers. So we went from capitalism to corporatism. And the corporatism is the oligarchy. And the corporatism is what the communists tell Americans is capitalism. What we see today as this rigged system of control when it comes to the economy and economics and the flow of and the cash flow, the flow of money within the economy, that is corporatism, not capitalism. Okay? You know what capitalism is? Capitalism is that kid that starts selling dime bags of weed on the corner and 2 years later he's selling 10 bricks a week. That's capitalism, okay? Capitalism is the the candy lady in the neighborhood that sells candy bars to the school kids after school for 25 cents a pop. And then before you know it, she makes enough money to open up a store. And now she owns a store where she hires people. That's capitalism. Okay? Capitalism is the guy that he's got a real good, he's really good at painting. He paints perfect lines and he's super skilled at painting, but he doesn't have any money, but he got a few people to hire him, provide him with the materials, and he provides the labor, makes enough money to buy his own materials, get his own truck, start his own business, and become a professional painter. That's capitalism. Corporatism, this is corporatism. Corporatism is when that candy lady makes enough money to open up her store, and then she opens up 10 more stores in the same city and starts cutting prices because she has access to a larger supply, and she starts cutting prices so much that she undercuts her competition. Now she's the one controlling the prices. Now she's supplying all the other stores that are competing with her. So if she decides, I don't like you, so I'm not going to supply your store with candy, guess what? That candy merchant, he's out of business now. She got to choose him to be the loser. Or let's say that painter that gets his truck and starts his painting business. He gets 20 more trucks. Now he's got 20 crews running around, and he could take jobs for super cheap, which squeezes out the startup guys that are starting the same way he started. And he's robbing them of that opportunity because he's monopolized that industry in that local area. That's corporatism. You see how that works? Or let's say the candy lady, she decides that she's made enough money. She leaves the stores to her kids to run, and she runs and becomes mayor of that city. And as the mayor of that city or of that county, she convinces the county board of commissioners to raise taxes on candy sales. Now, all the other competitors that are competing with the store that her kids are now running, they can't compete because their cost is going up. That's corporatism. And that's literally what we're dealing with in America right now. So what they tell you is, so when they tell you the American economic system is capitalism, those communists are doing what satanic communists do. They're lying to you, because what they're calling capitalism is not capitalism. So when Sanchez tells you capitalism is the rich people getting over on the poor people, he's a goddamn liar. That's corporatism. That's not capitalism. Because what he's doing by providing great content to his audience that they like and that they love and that they're willing to pay for, okay? When he makes those dope ass beats and sells them, and he makes that dope ass merch. He's got some dope merch. Shout out to Sanchez for the merch. I just disagree with him because he lies a lot. That's him engaging in capitalism. Now, as members of his audience, do you think they feel like he's getting over on them? Of course not. They feel like it's a fair exchange. Hey, I'm getting this great content. I'm going to put $20 on his Cash App. That's capitalism, because he's giving them something in exchange for revenue. So as he's cursing capitalism, he's literally engaging in capitalism. Talk about a fork-tongued devil. But what they're calling capitalism is actually corporatism. And what Trump is doing is Trump is trying to return the American economy back to a capitalist system from a corporatist system. And this is why all the corruption in government has to be addressed. This is why Doge was so important. Like, yeah, shout out to Sanchez, man. I love Sanchez. I ain't gonna lie. I got mad love for Sanchez. He's a really likable guy, but he fucking lies so much. I hate when he lies like that, because he's smart enough to know that's a fucking lie. But hey, I can't knock him. All I can do is critique him and call out the lies. And he's got every right to critique me. And if he feels like I'm lying about something, I'm with the smoke. I am with the smoke. I ain't got no problem with it. You know, and that's my brother. He, you know, and I'm sure he sees me as a brother the same way. We just disagree on key issues, because that communism shit is how he makes, preaching that communism shit is how he makes his money as a capitalist. So he's literally a capitalist preaching communism. It's the craziest shit in the world. I can't wrap my head around it. Excuse me. And it is hard to see it happen and stay silent about it. But I only use him as an example to show you how the narrative is being twisted, how they're taking capitalism and calling it, or they're taking corporatism and calling it capitalism. That's a lie. That's not true. That is not the truth. So with Doge, what Doge did was found all the fraud that government officials have been involved in, the programs where they tax the working class, and then they take that tax revenue, create these bullshit programs, and then they stuff their pockets with the money, and they leave the people hanging. They leave the taxpayer, they hang the taxpayers out to dry. That is corporatism. And step one in abolishing and destroying corporatism is not taxing the corporations. It's removing the government subsidies, the taxpayer subsidies that these corporations are getting. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean taxing them, like raising their taxes? No. What that means is removing the loopholes that they use to avoid paying taxes, and also cutting off the subsidized funds that are coming from the tax coffers that are subsidizing their companies. That's what that is. Cutting off their ability to engage in insider trading, cutting off their ability to, these politicians' abilities to make deals with these corporate lobbyists to write laws that favor the specific corporations but disadvantage other corporations. And because there's so much profit to be gained by these corrupt politicians, they have to demonize Trump and they have to stop him in order to keep their cash flow going. Because for a lot of these rich politicians, the worst thing that can happen to them, hell, the worst thing that can happen to any rich person is for them to have to live poor again. No rich person wants to have to live poor. Nobody living in a mansion wants to have to downsize to a 2,000, 3,000 square foot middle class home. No person driving a Ferrari wants to have to downgrade to a Honda. But if you gain that Ferrari from ill-gotten gains, like let's say you sold coke and got yourself a Ferrari and got busted, the government will seize that Ferrari. Then you'll do your time in prison. You get out of prison. You ain't got shit. Now you got to go to that Honda dealership. And it's hurtful for somebody who made it to that level and had to take a step, get knocked down and start over again. Shout out to my brother Keith for the Cash App. He says, for support. Appreciate you, Keith. Our first Cash App of the night. Shout out to you, brother. And this is why they're fighting so hard against Trump, because Trump is removing their opportunities to earn money on the backs of the taxpayers. Why do you think the Democrats constantly say their solution to every economic problem is to raise taxes? Oh, we're going to help the poor because we're going to take from the rich and give to the poor so they get the poor people to vote for them. This is why I say the Democratic Party is the party of bums, because their entire platform appeals to bums. Because only a bum with a bum mentality thinks that somebody who's got more than me got more than me because somehow they robbed me. That's a bum ass mentality to have. That is in the black community. Excuse me. That is what we refer to. That is those types of people we refer to as hating ass niggas. And the Democratic Party is the party of hating ass niggas. And if you grew up in the hood around black people and around niggas, you know the difference. All niggas do is hate. This is why rap music is so hateful. This is why rappers get killed so much, because they brag about all the shit they got and they hate on people that ain't got shit. And inevitably, some hating ass nigga is going to come out of nowhere and knock his ass off. That's what niggas do, is hate. And this is why 90% of the black voting electorate, they vote Democrat, because they a bunch of hating ass niggas. That's what it is. That's literally what it is. These are not sane, righteous people. These are hating ass, jealous ass people that don't want anybody to do better than them. So they vote for the politicians who say, I'm going to make sure you do better than everybody else. I'm going to take from everybody else and give to you. So they appeal to that hating ass nigga in each one of those voters. And I hate to use that terminology, but that's the word they use. That's the word. Divine Gun's laughing because he knows I'm right. He knows I'm right. This is why when a decent black person that lives in the ghetto surrounded by a bunch of broke ass hating ass niggas, when they make some money and they can afford to live somewhere nice, what do? Do they fix up the little house they have on Martin Luther King Boulevard and stay there with the black folks and uplift the community? No. They pack their shit and run as far away from that fucking ghetto as they can because they know that they can't survive and live well amongst these hating ass niggas. Look what happened to Nipsey Hussle. Left the hood, made his money, came back to the hood to bring opportunities to the hood, and some hating ass niggas shot him in the face. Jihad Valentine says, if I were extremely rich, I wouldn't mind still living poor while being extremely rich. Yeah, that's called being humble. That's called being humble, but not many people have that level of nobility. Because I'll tell you right now, the minute I got some money to get away from them hating ass niggas, that's the first fucking thing I did. Now I live in a predominantly white community where everybody is super nice and everybody has, if not more than me, just as much as me. So there's nobody around me, or there's very few people around me that have less than me. So there's no reason for them to hate on me and be jealous of me. You see, I surrounded myself with people of a similar economic status, so they don't have a reason to be jealous of me. And the people who live in my community that have less than me, they are actually working their way up to having the same as me or more than me. So they're on their grind and they're on their hustle. So instead of spending their time and their energy being jealous of me and hating on me, they're actually investing their time because they're not bums. They're investing their time and their energy into building themselves up. You see what I'm saying? You see, the poor people have two ways of viewing the rich: as a goal to aspire to get to, or as somebody to hate on, somebody to be jealous of. And the poor people who choose jealousy rather than aspiration, they usually remain at the bottom. Jeffrey B says, hey, Citizen Man, just finished rewinding the video. I'm late to this. We missed you. Oh man, thank you, Jeffrey B. Yeah, I had a hell of a 2 weeks these last 2 weeks, man. But I'm back. I'm back and I'm on fucking fire tonight because I've been seeing so much happening and so much going on that I gotta talk about it. And make sure y'all hit that like button, please. We got 41 watching and 29 likes. I'm seeing that on YouTube. I can't really see the Rumble stream though, because the phone that I normally use to view the Rumble stream on, it keeps like powering off and powering on, and I don't know what the fuck's going on with it. Like it won't stay on, it won't charge. I don't know what the hell's happening. But we got 24 on Rumble and 8 likes. 8 thumbs up. So make sure you guys hit that thumbs up on Rumble, y'all. And I hate to use the N-word like that in that type of language, but that's those people. That's how they operate. That's how they roll. That's how they move. And shout out to my man Divine Gun. He knows, and most decent black folks know this. And it will only be a hating ass nigga that would hear me say this and do what? Hate on it. Because that's what the fuck they do. They won't acknowledge it. And it could even be a hating ass nigga that got robbed by some other hating ass niggas. And they'll still try to deny what I'm saying. Because they just need a reason to hate. It's the crabs in the barrel mentality. But that crabs in the barrel mentality, it was sold to Americans, not just black people. I only talk about it in terms of black people because that's my firsthand experience being black in America. But there's other groups of people that do that too. Just not they're just not as out in the open with it as the black folks are. But it exists. But anyway, the point is, the point is, the communist propaganda, it's meant to mislead the American people into stripping themselves of the opportunity to capitalize on the opportunities available to us here in America in this capitalist economy. You see, the music industry, for example, that's a corporatist system where the big record labels, the big corporations that are the record labels, they get to pick and choose who wins, not based on talent, but based on who gets diddled the best, who's the most willing to be diddled, right? And because they have a monopoly of control over this industry, there is no, or there's very few avenues for the independents to make it. And anybody that comes out of that industry and tries to go independent has all types of roadblocks put in their way. So they're not allowed to flourish. They're not allowed to compete. You see, capitalism is all about competition. It's about fair competition. And in every competition, there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. That's a fact of life. But you see, the Democratic Party with their participation trophy mentality and their selling of the bum mentality with this communism bullshit, they don't want people to believe that winners and losers is a part of life. So they appeal to the losers by telling them all the winners won by cheating, which then makes the poor people, the losers, hate the winners. And if you hate the winners, guess what? You have just doomed yourself to a lifetime of being a loser. Because who would aspire to be that which they hate? So if you convince the poor people to hate the rich people, essentially you've convinced the poor people to stay poor. And as long as you can keep the poor people poor, every other societal issue that comes along with poverty now becomes exasperated. And now you can then further profit off of those problems by pretending to solve them. Which brings me to the Democrats' love for crime and criminals. They call Donald Trump a racist and a fascist and all this shit because he wants to stop crimes in these cities. He wants to stop the crime epidemic. So why are the Democrats fighting so hard against Donald Trump trying to stop the crime? Well, Charleston White explained this, and he explained it perfectly. And it was quite surprising for many to hear it come from Charleston White of all people. But it was true nevertheless. I wasn't surprised because I know Charleston White is a genius. He just knows how to play on them same hating ass niggas and get them to love him, which is a skill not many possess. But nevertheless, Charleston White broke it down like this because he's been in the political game long enough to know. He said, these politicians, they love and they support criminals and they support the crime. Because if they let the criminals back out on the streets and they let the crimes persist, they can then seek government grants, taxpayer funding, to create these so-called crime prevention programs and youth programs where they create these 501c3 tax exempt organizations. They get government funding and government grants to quote unquote help stop the crime and prevent these young men from falling into a life of crime and all of that shit. And they don't really do anything to stop or prevent the crime. They just pretend as if they want to stop and prevent the crime in order to continue getting that government funding. It's sort of like these YouTubers, these communists. I ain't gonna keep dropping the man's name, but you know who I'm talking about. It's like these communists who constantly complain about problems in the government and government corruption, but they never, and most of the corruption stems from infiltration of the government by corrupt individuals. But they never advocate for righteous individuals to re-infiltrate the government en masse to put a stop to the corruption. They love the fact that there's so much government corruption because they get paid for complaining about it. And if the corruption stops tomorrow, there'll be nothing for them to complain about. And if they get paid for complaining, but they have nothing to complain about, they can't get paid. So they need that corruption to persist so they have to hate Donald Trump, because if anybody else other than Trump gets in there, the corruption persists. If the corruption persists, the complaining can persist. And if the complaining persists, that means their revenue stream continues. You see? You see that? It's the exact same game that these politicians play with these fake ass 501c3 tax exempt crime prevention organizations. It's the same game they play, where they create these organizations under the guise of helping to prevent and stop the crime, right? But if the crime actually stops, there's no need for these 501c3 organizations and these crime prevention programs to continue. Thus, they lose their revenue stream. So they need no cash bails. They need a bunch of illegal aliens from prisons in foreign countries being shipped to the United States. They need the massive crime wave, because with the massive crime wave comes the opportunity to capitalize on it. See how that works? This is why you have these Democrats now fighting tooth and nail for these illegals to remain in their sanctuary cities. Because with the illegal aliens comes a new crime wave. And with this new crime wave comes a new excuse to create new programs in order to get more revenue. It's about the money at the end of the day. So if they were to take a step back, shut the fuck up, and let Trump do his thing, the crime would stop. The government corruption would stop. And if the government corruption stops, the Trump haters online that get paid for complaining about it, they don't make their money anymore. If the crime stops, the corrupt politicians who get paid through these nonprofit organizations won't get paid anymore. So at the end of the day, the entire anti-Trump movement was started in the first place to maintain the revenue stream. That's why they have to maintain the corruption and maintain the crime and maintain the open borders. You see? You see how that works? I hope you guys are following me. I hope y'all not losing me so far. I really hope y'all not losing me, because this is bigger than Nino Brown, as they would say. This is bigger than Nino Brown. This is about a massive money grab scheme that's been going on for decades, right in front of our faces, while we were being made to believe that these people who were profiting off the plight of Americans were actually trying to solve these plights. They have to make us believe that, because as long as we believe they're trying to solve the problem, we'll be okay with putting money in their pockets to solve the problem. But once we realize that they're not actually trying to solve the problem, they're just trying to put money in their pockets, then that money stops. And then we start looking for real solutions. Then we start looking at what Donald Trump is doing. Why do you think so many politicians in these Democratic cities are mad at Trump deploying the military to their cities to stop the crime? Because he's stopping their money flow through these 501c3s. But the people of those cities who are being victimized by this crime are happy. They're glad that Trump is actually doing something about it. And the reason why they're glad that Trump's doing something about it is because those people genuinely want to stop the crime. They don't care about the revenue because they're not profiting from the crime. They're losing because of the crime. They can't walk their kids to the store because of the crime. They can't start a business and profit because of the crime. Thank you, Barnes and Mike Hill. You guys are awesome, man. Barnes says, C-Man, you're ripping them a new one. And Mike Hill says, I don't think you could have broken this down any better, Citizen Man. I appreciate that, you guys. I appreciate that. You know what I appreciate some more? Is some cash apps. I know telling the truth ain't profitable. I know it ain't. Because when I was profiting, YouTube went out of their way to shut me down. You see, they want the bullshit to be profitable. They want to incentivize the lies. They want people to continue selling the lies. They want guys like me with prolific voices to side with the Trump haters, because by siding with the Trump haters, you're siding with the criminals and you're siding with the corruption, which means you're helping their cash flow. You're helping them maintain their cash flow. But you do anything to undermine their cash flow, and they don't want shit to do with you. And that's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. It's a sad fucking world we're living in. It really is. I never thought I'd see the day where America would fall this low. I never thought I'd see the day where America would be like ran by such corrupt people. I never thought America could be this corrupt, but it is. And a lot of people knew America was corrupt, but we just didn't know how corrupt until Trump came on the scene and started exposing that shit. And you know, to this day, there's still people going to prison over the Doge investigations. To this day. Excuse me. Trump's work ain't done yet. And the anti-Trump movement is starting to lose steam because more and more American people are starting to see that Trump was right. And the Trump supporters had a point. It's only the political establishment and their puppet shills on social media and in the mainstream media that are still on this Trump hate shit. But as the boots on the ground American people, we're starting to see it for what it is. And the establishment is afraid of that. Because once the people as a whole start to see that this corruption is only feeding the beast, they're going to start to change their ideologies and their viewpoints, and they're going to start to vote different. And there's going to be a new wave of righteous individuals taking over government positions. And as they take over these government positions, their predecessors who use these positions as a means to profit and raise revenue, they'll be out of a job. They'll be out of business. Yeah, you got the corrupt politicians, you got the activist judges, you got the bought and paid for prosecutors, you got the bought and paid for YouTubers, you got the bought and paid for. Listen, anybody on YouTube claiming that they're here to tell you the truth, but they're selling you Trump derangement syndrome and Trump hate, they're not telling you the truth. They might tell you the truth about a whole bunch of shit that don't matter. But when it comes to the shit that really matters, like who's running your country, they're not telling you the truth. And they're not going to tell you the truth. Shout out to my man D. Allen with the Cash App. He says flat motherfucking power. And this is not an attack on my brother Sanchez. I got a bunch of people that watch me that also follow Sanchez. This is not an attack on my brother. This is hopefully this is going to open his eyes to see that him joining in the Trump hate is serving the same establishment he claims to be against. And if he's a real honest man and he's not bought and paid for, he'll change his tune. But if he refuses to change his tune, that should tell you all you need to know. Ain't it funny how he tells you all this truth about so much shit? Because I've learned a lot from the man myself. That's why I respect him so much. And that's why it bothers me so deeply when I see him tell these lies. But he'll give you so many great truths about so many things. But when it comes to politics, he almost always seems to sell the same narrative, just in a slightly different flavor that the mainstream media is selling you. And it's kind of disappointing. Now, it'd be one thing if it was a more balanced approach, like for example, yeah, I don't fuck with Trump. Yeah, I don't like Trump. I think he's a corrupt piece of shit. But you know what? I agree with him shutting down the border and getting all these illegals out of here because as a black man, these illegals are taking over black communities and posing threats to black people. And these Latino gangs have gang initiations that involve killing a black person in order to become a gang member. So getting those racist motherfuckers out of our country, I commend Trump for doing that. Can you guys name anybody in this chat that's been watching that watches Brother Sanchez? D. Allen, you watch Brother Sanchez a lot. And Divine Gun. I don't know how much you watch Sanchez, but I know D. Allen. I see D. Allen in his chat a lot. And anybody else that follows Sanchez, right? Tell me one positive thing he said about Trump. Of all the great shit Trump has done for America, he's done a lot of shit that I disagree with too, right? But tell me one thing Sanchez has said good about Trump. I'll give you a few minutes. Drawing blanks, huh? Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too. Now I can tell you some negative things that I've said about Trump and all of my positive shit I've said about Trump because I understand the game that he's playing and why he's playing it the way that he's playing it. One negative thing I said about Trump was when they started with the pandemic bullshit, he should have came right out the gates and told the American people that all this lockdown bullshit is illegal. This forced masking shit is illegal. You don't have to comply. He should have came right out and said it. Now, I understand why he didn't say it, because he needed the American people to be smart enough to understand that we need to know the laws that protect us, and we have to learn it ourselves. We can't be spoon-fed. But most Americans needed to be spoon-fed. And in him feeding the American people that tidbit of information, it would have thrown a huge monkey wrench in their entire scamdemic plan. It would have never gotten to the point of the vaccine. So although I understand his motives behind not coming out and saying it, I disagree with that methodology because that wasn't very effective with the American people. But had he come out and said it, it would have been much more effective. Okay, Divine Gun. Fair enough. Fair enough. He says Sanchez admits that Trump is upfront with his fuckery and he's just entertaining and he puts money in people's pockets. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You see, and that's one more reason why I have to respect Sanchez, because I personally have never heard him say anything positive about Trump. But I also have to admit, I don't watch Sanchez all the time. You know what I'm saying? So for Divine Gun to give me that tidbit, I have to say, at least he said something positive about the man. It wasn't very positive, but it was positive enough. So I stand corrected. Thank you for that, Divine Gun. I appreciate that. And that was an honest question. That's why I asked that question. But I think my point still stands, though, because although it may be a positive comment, it's more like a backhanded compliment. Like, yeah, you're an asshole, but at least you're upfront about your assholery. But yes, he does put money in people's pockets. He does. And a lot of those people are black people. And another thing I haven't heard Sanchez say is he hasn't played the whole Trump is a racist card. So I guess I have to give him his props for that too. And I agree with you on that, Divine Gun. He says, I think Sanchez just hates all of them, period. Yes, and I was actually going to touch on that. Although Sanchez plays the mainstream media side of the field when it comes to Trump, one thing I can say is he's consistent in his disdain for all presidents. So I can't say he's being unfair to Trump because he supported Bush or he supported Obama or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, he hates them all. But Trump in particular gets a lot more hate. Like, he hated on Trump during the Biden years more than he hated on Biden. Although he did have his critiques of Biden, they were not nearly as extensive as his critiques on Trump. But nevertheless, you have to be careful of who you follow and who you listen to and who you get your information from, because everybody has got an agenda. That's the thing. Everybody has an agenda. But and shout out to you, Divine Gun, for filling me in on those blanks, because those points were blanks to me. I was not aware of that. So I was speaking out of ignorance, and I don't want to speak out of ignorance. I want to be 100% straight up and spot on about everything I say, because I don't want to be here misleading y'all. But Sanchez has admitted himself that he is a communist. And communism is the worst economic system. And if you think black people are suffering under this corporatist system that we're under now, we will get the shortest end of the stick if the communists get their way and they convert this economy to a full communist system. Because what happens under communism, because again, the theory in communism is the government being the ones in control, they seize control of all the resources and they oversee the even and equal distribution of those resources. But that's in theory. But in reality, the government seizes control of all the resources, period. And there is no equal distribution of all resources. And the only distribution of resources is amongst themselves and the people they favor. And I don't know if you noticed as a Black American, but the federal government has not been very favorable to Black Americans in the past. So why would you think they'll be favorable to Black Americans under communism? You know what I see happening to Black America under communism? The Black population will have the most resources extracted from them with the least given to them in return. That's what would happen to Black people under communism. Black people would literally become the slave class, the last in line to get any of the free government handouts, but the first in line to be taxed to the neck. I mean, the Democrat Party kind of operates under a system of communism in areas they control, right? Where they have the highest taxes, the most government programs, and the most government handouts. But almost every majority Black area in America is run by Democrats. So if you have densely Black populated areas ran by Democrats that believe in high taxes, who you think's paying the highest taxes? The poor working class Black folks that live under these Democrats. And this is why the poverty persists. This is why rent's so fucking high in every major city. And the same crooked Democrats that are the cause of rent being high as fuck, they'll lie to you and tell you it's the greedy landlords that are raising everybody's rent because they just want more money and they're greedy, which is a lie, because it's the greedy politicians that are taxing the shit out of the landlords, raising their property taxes. And when property taxes go up, the people who pay rent to live in those properties have to pay a higher rent. So it's property taxes that drive up the cost of living. It's the taxation. And when you look at the country on the red and blue scale across the board, what you'll find in majority blue areas, the cost of living is much higher. And what you'll also find to accompany that high cost of living is the rate of taxation is higher. The two go hand in hand. Because if the store owner has a higher tax bill, that means less profits. And in order to maintain his profit margins, he now has to raise the prices on his products in the store. If the landlord has to pay more taxes, then the poor people that are renting from him, they have to pay more in rent. So the whole Democrat ideology of tax the rich, it actually amounts to overcharging the poor. And that leads to the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Because in some cases, they are greedy business owners and greedy landlords who could very well and afford to take that cut in their profit margin, but they're not gonna. And once the taxes go up on them, the increase in the taxes now gives them an excuse to raise the rent or raise the prices. So whether the price increases stem from greed or need, it still stems from the high ass fucking taxes. Here's how I would work the tax system. If I was in charge of America, here's what I would do with the tax system. I would completely abolish the IRS. 1000%. Everybody that work at the IRS, fuck you. Go get a real job. Right? All that W-2 bullshit and tax deductions out of employees' paychecks and all that, that shit's over with. Everybody brings home 100% of all the money they make. Right? And what I would do is for W-2 employees or formerly W-2 employees, I would set up, well, for business owners, property owners, and W-2 employees alike, I would set up a subscription program or something like a subscription program, right? So it's like if you subscribe to a news outlet and you pledge to pay $5 a month for access to their content, right? That's a subscription. But let's say there's different tiers. So if you want the bronze tier where you only get the news articles that you have to read, that's $5 a month. If you want the silver tier where you get the news articles with the videos, then you pay $10 a month. If you want the gold tier where you get the news articles, the sources, the links, and the videos, then you get, $15 a month. Or if you want the platinum package, you pay $20 a month, and that allows you to have copyrights to the information that they put out so you can then share it on your own and profit from it yourself, right? So I'll do something similar with the taxation system where it'll still be income based, right? So if you make $30,000 a year or less, you'll pay, I don't know, $10 a month. That's your subscription. That's your taxes. You pay $10 a month in taxes, or $20 a month, $25 a month in taxes. Most working people can afford $25 a month. And that's your tax bill. And at the end of the year, you will have paid, at the end of 12 months, let's see, 25 times 12, you will have paid $300 into the system. And at the end of the year, you don't get no money back. You don't get no child tax credit. You don't have to file no taxes or nothing. What you do is you renew your subscription. So the working folks that make $30,000 a year would go from paying thousands of dollars a year in tax deductions out of their paychecks to paying $300 a year. You know how many more people would be willing to do business above the table than below the table if that were the case? And then for businesses, for companies, right? Now, let's say people making $30,000 or less pay $25 a month. People making anywhere from $31,000 to $50,000 a year or $60,000 a year, they pay $50 a month. If you're making anywhere from $60,000 to $120,000, you pay $100 a month. If you own a business and your company is making under $100,000 a year, you pay $200 a month in taxes. If you're making, $100,000 or above, it could go all the way into the millions. You pay $500 a month in taxes. You can afford that shit. You know how many more businesses would actually be willing to file taxes because they don't have to be afraid of getting hit with a multi-$1,000 bill? And at the end of the year, instead of quote unquote filing your taxes, all you do is you renew your subscription, you download your receipt from all your payments from this year to prove that you paid your taxes, and life goes on. And the government will get way more revenue. And when you start up your business, you pay, instead of getting the EIN number for free, you pay 2 months worth of subscription every month for your to set up your tax subscription. So when you start your business, right, you pay a flat fee of $200, and then you start off paying $200 a month because you're not making that much revenue. Let's say in 3 months your company blows up and you're making a quarter million, you make a quarter million in your first year, right? You still only paid $2,400 for the year, but when you renew, you submit all your income documents. That's how you renew, to prove how much money you were making, and then your subscription price jumps to $500 a month. And now in your second year, after you renew, you start paying that $500 a month. You know how many small businesses and independent contractors out there would be happy to pay that because they don't have the threat of jail hanging over their fucking heads anymore? And you know how much more revenue the government would make? But that would only be possible if the bloated size of the federal government was reined in and shrunken down. And if the government was smaller and more efficient and carried out the same or similar duties, but for a fraction of the cost, then that revenue would be usable. Excuse me. Now, when it comes to those big multi-billion-dollar corporations, now we're in a whole different ball game, right? Let's say your company makes anywhere from $250,000 a year and up, because that's the government's margin for what they deem to be rich. $250,000 a year, which is actually pretty good. It's pretty good money. Anything above that, you pay, I don't know, $5,000 a month in taxes. Which kind of amounts to, if you're making $250,000 a year, that amounts to $60,000 coming out of your $250,000. So you take home $190,000. That's about what a person making $250,000 a year now is paying in taxes anyway. But it's a more streamlined, simpler process. And what happens if you fail to pay your subscription? Your business license is pulled. Now you can't operate no more. Or at least you can't operate legitimately. And if you're caught operating illegitimately, then you go to jail. Then all your revenue and your assets get seized. And then we bust your ass down to nothing because you could have paid your fucking tax subscription and been safe. I think that's a better way to do it. And for small businesses that are making $100,000, the $50,000 to $100,000 range, or $120,000 range, that are paying that $200 a month, if you lapse in your payment, let's say you miss 2 months of payments or 3 months of payments, I'll give you a 6-month window to make up for it. Or I give you till your next renewal to make up for it. So you can continue to operate, you can make all your money, but when it's time to renew that tax subscription, and you have to submit your revenue documentation, you will then have to pay those back tax costs, which means 6 months at $200 a month, $1,200. You'd have to pay that $1,200 to renew your tax subscription and start paying monthly again. Otherwise, we won't renew you and your business is shut down. I don't know what you guys think about that or if you understand how that works, but I think that would work a lot better than the whole progressive tax system where you're taxed by percentage and it's all complex with all these different write-offs and deductions and all that bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. And I'll tell you why it's bullshit. Because they tell us, the American people, that these big multi-million and multi-billion-dollar corporations are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in taxes. But then when you look at all the tax loopholes and all the ways that they can avoid paying any taxes at all, most of them don't pay taxes at all. So doing the subscription thing, something similar to what I described, that eliminates all of those loopholes. That eliminates their ability to skate by and, claim write-offs and deductions and all that stupid shit. Because I think that shit's stupid. It's fucking stupid. Because why are you going to have these high ass tax rates, but then write these loopholes into the laws where those high ass tax rates don't have to be paid? Why would you do that? It seems pointless to me. Feckless almost. See, this is why they don't want me running shit. This is why I can't, they not gonna let me make this is why they not gonna let me make big YouTuber money on YouTube. They might on Rumble, but not on YouTube. This is why. Because I have great ideas that will shake the system up the way Trump is shaking the system up. But speaking of Trump shaking the system up, so the thumbnail here, I don't know if you guys got a chance to take a good look at it, but the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois are both standing in solidarity to protect the criminals, to prevent Trump from deporting the illegals and sending in the military to stop the gang violence. And again, for the exact reasons that I mentioned earlier. You see, these Democrats, they're not stupid people. Although they support a bunch of stupid shit, they know that shit is stupid just as well as we know it's stupid. But for them, it's profitable. It's just like cocaine, right? We know that shit's unhealthy. The cocaine dealers know that shit's unhealthy and kills people. But guess what? They're going to keep selling it because it's about profit, not about health. Just like these Democrats, they're about profit. They're not about representation. Because what they're standing for is not what the people of Chicago were standing for. It's not what the American people are in support of. And the Israel-Palestine thing. So Trump made the peace deal with Palestine, but China threatened the shit out of Israel. And we'll get to that. But this is a funny one. Grand jury indicts New York Attorney General Letitia James, a Trump opponent, on bank fraud charges. Well, it's not bank fraud. It's actually mortgage fraud. Divine Gun says, hold up, Coke isn't healthy? Well, in large amounts, it's not. But some would argue that there are some health benefits to cocaine, especially if you were to take a time machine and go back to the 1940s or the 1930s, I believe it was, when Coca-Cola was actually using cocaine as one of their main ingredients. This is why the company called their drink Coke, because you're literally drinking cocaine. But anyway, if you guys want to support the show, you can do so by sending in a kind donation via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo. Don't forget to support the show. Also, go subscribe to the Citizen Man Backup channel. Follow me on Rumble as well, because YouTube be playing games. So follow your boy on Rumble, because all the content that's missing off YouTube, you'll find it over on Rumble. Also, get yourself a copy of the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies, Metabolic Cooking, and Anabolic Cooking. And let's go to slide number 1. Yeah, I had a whole slideshow this whole time. I've been cooking for hours and I had a whole slideshow just sitting here. So it's happening. Trump's mass arrests have begun. Now, this is what I was telling you guys about the military deployment, the National Guard deployment. See, people think it's a joke because it's the National Guard, but what they fail to realize is the National Guard actually has, excuse me, highly capable special operations units attached to their outfits. So whenever the National Guard gets deployed across the United States, if the president wanted to use special operators to conduct covert operations, while the National Guardsmen, while the regular National Guardsmen do street patrols for the cameras, that's possible. That can be done, and that's exactly what Trump is doing. Okay, Joy. I don't know who the fuck this person is, but yeah, you can get the fuck out of my chat. This is the third time you came in my chat and said some stupid shit. So now you got to go. I don't know where the fuck you people come from, but you can go back to fellation your trans husband now, Mr. Roy. I already know how you people get down. That's why I don't tell y'all what city and state I live in, because y'all done came at me before. So yeah. And I'm not afraid of what you're going to do to me. I'm afraid of what I might have to do to you. So before we get to that point, I'm just going to go ahead and block you out of my chat and act like you never existed. So anyway, so Trump's mass arrests have begun. And the mass arrests are going after the Antifa leaders, the Antifa funders, the Antifa organizers, the cartel members, the shooters, the hit squads, the the would-be bombers, the would-be orchestrators of these events, these mass casualty events, etc. So while the National Guard is in the streets stopping gang violence and dealing with the ICE protests and all of that shit, the people that are paying these protesters and the people that are being used as pawns to not just antagonize, but physically impede ICE from doing their jobs. Special ops are going after these people because we're dealing with terrorist organizations. You see, when Donald Trump declared the cartels, the Latin American drug cartels, terrorist organizations, he also excuse me. He also was declaring excuse me, Jesus Christ. Shout out to my man Devin with the Cash App. He says, thanks for the content. Keep doing your thing. Appreciate you, Devin. So, anyway, when Trump declared these drug cartels terrorist organizations, he was also referring to their operatives here in the United States that operate domestically. They're domestic terrorists. And thanks to George H.W. Bush, or not George H.W., George W. Bush, and his collaboration with the Israeli Mossad to carry out one of the largest terrorist attacks in U.S. history, 9/11, to create the fake war on terror, he basically gave the president more powers over the military to be used domestically in the name of fighting terrorism. So once Trump put out that, yeah, I know I hit the J and I was trying to talk at the same time. It just went all wrong. It just went all wrong. But anyway, once George H.W. Bush, through the Patriot Act, gave himself more presidential powers to go after terrorists, that also involved domestic terrorists. So now that Trump is using that terrorist organization designation, that now greenlights the military to go after them because we're in a state of declared war and have been in that state of declared war since 2001. And what have we declared war on in 2001? Terrorism. So the war on terrorism, thanks to President Trump, has made it to American shores. But this is where the war on terrorism should have been fought because apparently this is where the terrorists are killing Americans in America. So this war on terror actually makes sense. Excuse me. And when Trump declared Antifa a terrorist organization in 2020, that was all in preparation for what we're seeing now. Not only was it in response to the 2020 riots, but it was also in preparation for what they had planned next. And of course, Black Lives Matter wasn't designated a terrorist organization because the riots and the insurance claims were being done in the name of Black Lives Matter. So the businesses that were making insurance claims because of the property damage would have been able to get bigger payouts on their claims, because once they added the domestic terrorism element to the source of the damages, that would have afforded those companies to collect extra larger, more substantial payouts from their insurance companies due to it being an act of terrorism. So the designation was never placed on Black Lives Matter, and that was the initial reason. The new reason, or the other reason that's just come to my attention since the Charlie Kirk incident — I can't call it assassination because I don't think he's dead — but since the Charlie Kirk incident, is that Black Lives Matter doesn't really pose a threat. It's Antifa that are the ones that are really about it. And the reason why I say that is because even in 2020, most of the Black Lives Matter protesters, like the legitimate BLM protesters, not the Patrice Cullors minions and all of them, but the actual, everyday average people that believed in that bullshit, they would protest by day and they would do so peacefully. And it was a majority Black folks. Then when the sun would go down, those peaceful protests would be Michael Guest says, just getting in to hear the word. Appreciate you, Michael. When the sun would go down, those peaceful protesters would go home, and from out of town would come the white Antifa rioters, who would then start burning down local Black businesses and destroying these Black communities. And now today we see acts of domestic terrorism being carried out and Antifa claiming responsibility for these acts of terrorism. So Black Lives Matter was more of a money grab and a scam that really didn't work out as well as the scammers thought it would. But Antifa is the real militant arm of the left that are willing to get their hands dirty and, get bloody and get down and dirty. Shout out to Chinana for the Cash App. She says, thank you for all the information. Great show as always. Appreciate you, Chinana. Let's go read this slide here. Federal forces are executing a nationwide cleanup. Sanctuary cities are collapsing as hidden command networks are dismantled. Those hidden command networks would be your funders and your organizers. And this is why the ICE raids had to trigger those protests and those riots like that, because once those protests and those riots start, somebody is putting out the call to action, and somebody is signing the checks. Those are the two groups of people that are responsible for all the domestic terror. The people that are giving the order and the people that are paying the money. And usually it's the same person for every group. Trump's return to full authority has unleashed sealed operations that have been waiting since 2021. What began with Memphis was only the opening strike. Thousands arrested, hundreds missing. The media is silent. Yeah. And the thousands that are arrested, these would be your everyday protesters that are assaulting the police or assaulting the federal officers, and also the illegals that are being apprehended and deported. The hundreds that are missing, these would be the organizers and the funders of those riots and those protests, and they are going missing because those special operations groups that are attached to the National Guard units, they are doing covert snatch and grab operations, which to the normal, like let's say you live in a neighborhood and the guy 3 houses down from you is all you know is that he's a college professor. That's all you know about him, because nowadays most people don't know everything about their neighbors because people don't really talk to their neighbors like that. But let's say all you know, he's a college professor, and then one day you see a couple of black SUVs and some armed men that appear to be police, and they're wearing police vests, kicking in his door and bringing him out in handcuffs. You're going to be like, oh shit, that guy up the street was into some shit, you know? But chances are you probably won't look online. You won't know shit else unless you see it on the news, but it won't be on the news. And to you and the rest of the neighborhood, it just looks like a normal police raid or a normal arrest. But really, it was the military special operations unit grabbing him and taking him to a black site because he's being arrested for domestic terrorism. He has no constitutional rights, and he's going to be prosecuted under the law of armed conflict, as discussed by Lindsey Graham and Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh at his confirmation hearing. Go watch that video. I played it for you guys on the last show, I think. Or let's say I'll do you one better. Let's say the guy up the street is a college. All you know is he's a college professor. You don't know nothing else about him. And one day, or let's say one day you just stop seeing him. Now his yard's overgrown and his house is up for sale. You'll just think that he moved. Mind you, a month ago, late one night while you were all in your bed sleeping and nobody saw it, those same black SUVs pulled up, or maybe one black SUV pulled up. 4 guys in all black got out, knocked on his door. He came to the door and they identified themselves and took him into custody, and he went quietly and nobody knows a thing. Or let's say he didn't answer the door and they had to kick his door in and bust his door in. They could do that in the middle of the night. Who would be the wiser? So that will be your hundreds missing. The media, and remember, these Antifa goons, they like to wear masks and cover their faces, so you wouldn't know it was them anyway. The media is silent. Of course, the media is silent. This is not local crime cleanup, and this is why Trump deployed the National Guard, because the special operations units deployed with them. This is not local crime cleanup. This is counterinsurgency. Mayors, judges, city attorneys, NGO heads, and intel contractors are being detained under sealed indictments. Sanctuary cities were never about immigrants. They were foreign-controlled nodes for trafficking, cartel logistics, money laundering, and proxy warfare inside U.S. borders. Those hubs are now falling. And this is what I mean when I said this whole Antifa thing is a lot bigger, it's a lot deeper than just some leftists mad at Trump and wanting to get violent. These were organized domestic terroristic groups, and they were heavily armed and ready to do battle. Federal task forces embedded with DHS, Marshals, and JAG intelligence have invoked continuity of government protocols. Compromised officials are being extracted without negotiations. Some cooperate, others vanish. City halls are emptying, courtrooms are dark. The grid is breaking. And this is happening all over the country, but we're not hearing about it because here is the continuity of government thing. Now, if you go back in my Rumble streams where I talk about the Biden show, the fake Biden presidency, I think that was back in like 21, 22. I did a whole stream called The Biden Show is COG, Continuity of Government. And I read over the specifics of what continuity of government entails and compared it to what we're seeing from the Biden administration, and it all aligned, even down to the fact that they were using stand-ins to play the role of Biden and Harris and everybody else in his administration to put the American people's minds at ease, because the American people could more digest a stolen election than they could digest the possibility of the military coming in and grabbing a presidential candidate. But what we're seeing now is COG on the local level. So it could very well be that J.B. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson have long left the scene, and these two characters we see in the thumbnail are just stand-ins for Brandon Johnson and Governor Pritzker, or these could be pre-recorded press conferences that led to their arrests, And they're now being aired in the media as if it's happening currently. All these actions would fall under COG protocols, continuity of government protocols. All right. This is why reading these documents about that describe what these programs are and what these protocols are is very important, and understanding it is important. Go watch my stream on Rumble called The Biden Show is COG, and you will see what this continuity of government shit, what it really entails, and then look at what's happening in these localities, and you will see that what this person had posted is absolutely correct. Compromised officials are being extracted without negotiation. Those would be the government officials that got elected through election fraud and or funding from foreign money, funded with foreign money, because that would make them foreign assets. Some cooperate, others vanish. City halls are emptying, courtrooms are dark, the grid is breaking. And the ones who cooperate, they get to hang around. The ones who vanish, they're the real dirty ones. Chicago, Portland, Atlanta, Seattle, Austin, Philadelphia, each under federal watch. Classified seizures of servers, funds, and encrypted networks continue. And the seizures of funds is what's important, because it was the seizures of the Black Lives Matter funds is what caused the Black Lives Matter protests to die down by 2021 when they try to start it up again. NGO charities, and what you're going to see is, as proof of the seizures of funds, you're going to start to see these anti-ICE protests just start to fizzle out of nowhere. NGO charities exposed as foreign fronts. Over $1.2 billion frozen by Treasury's Financial Crimes Division. The fake humanitarian cover is gone, replaced by federal command. Yep, the fake humanitarian cover. And that's what I was talking about, where I said these politicians create these 501c3s that they get government funding for in the name of stopping the crime that they're allowing to happen, in order to create a slush fund and a pipeline of taxpayer money to keep funding that slush fund. All that shit's over with. And this is what Doge dug up. And this is why these operations are happening. Because when Elon Musk said Doge is finding things a lot worse than financial crimes, this is Trump's response to those things that are a lot worse than financial crimes, like funding of domestic terrorism and human and child trafficking. Over $1.2 billion frozen by Treasury's Financial Crime Division. The fake humanitarian cover is gone, replaced by federal command. Military tribunals have begun, not televised. Right, there's no news outlets that report on military tribunals. Just like in federal court cases, they don't allow cameras. Well, in military court cases, they don't allow media, because in military tribunals, those tribunals are held under the law of armed conflict, not under American civilian constitutional law. So the litigants in those cases, being the prosecution and the defendants, they are not operating under U.S. law or under constitutional law. They're operating under military law. Conducted at secured JAG sites for crimes of treason, sedition, and subversion. Over 30 high-level defendants confirmed in closed trials. These are not rumors. These are active wartime proceedings under under military law, just like I said. Officials on leave are being held. Federal extraction teams have removed entire departments. Treasury audits, DOJ seizures, and grand jury reviews are expanding. Right. Like Letitia James, like you guys saw in the thumbnail. Excuse me. This is asset denial during wartime. The dismantling of the deep state municipal grid. Right. because not only does the deep state have a foothold in the federal government, but they also their strongest foothold is in the local governments. The emergency broadcast test was no coincidence. It was a national synchronization event preparing for the public phase. Trump's recorded message is locked under continuity protocol, ready to activate if the elite retaliation escalates. Now, what is the elite retaliation? The elite retaliation is the assassination of Charlie Kirk, or the Charlie Kirk incident, I should call it. These mass shootings that the trannies are carrying out, these armed Antifa groups plotting more mass shootings, bombings, and all of that shit. The cartel hit squads targeting politicians and so on. These would be the retaliations. The parallel government, the shadow network of city-based globalist power, that would be your international Masons, is burning from within, and it's been set on fire by the American Masons. Sanctuary strongholds are gone, their financial pipelines severed, their protection shattered. Now their financial pipelines are being severed. Guess how? You know, we're in a government shutdown right now. The Democrats and the Republicans in Congress can't seem to agree on a resolution to fund the government moving forward for the next year, next fiscal year. And why is that? That's because the Democrats need to keep the taxpayer money going to these 501c3 organizations, these NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are funding the illegals. Because that money that's going to fund the illegals is also being diverted to fund Antifa domestic terrorists. And because of the government shutdown, none of that money is moving right now. And this is why Trump said, I'm going to let the shutdown happen, because with the government shutdown is shutting down Democrat programs. What he meant by Democrat programs was funding for the illegals. This is why the Democrats were saying, we'll shut down the government if Republicans don't vote to fund the illegals. Because yes, they're going to give some of the money to the illegals, but most of the money they're going to give to the Antifa domestic terrorists, and they're going to skim off the top to shove in their own bank accounts. So Trump shut it down. Now, in the Democrats' own stubbornness, they've lost all of their cash flow from that particular source. You got to love it. You got to love it. This was carefully planned and well coordinated since the day Trump took office on January 20th, because that was the day he put Elon Musk to work to follow the money. And he followed the money, and now we're seeing military deployments across the country. Military deployments that contain special operations units for snatch and grabs. So how you like that? How you like that? This is why y'all got to hit the Cash App and support the show, man. This is real shit. Because you see, in the mainstream media and from the bigger YouTube channels that don't dig as deep as we do, they're just talking about the surface level shit. National Guard being deployed, Democrats are mad. But they're not giving you the real scoop. They're not telling you why the Democrats are really mad, and they're not really telling you, who's being deployed with these military units. Where are we at? Next paragraph, next page. This is not reform. This is the purge. Trump's counteroffensive is active. The deep state's urban empire is collapsing, and America is watching it fall. I risked everything so you could know the truth. Don't turn away now. Join my channel immediately. Julian Assange Wiki. And this is why they built Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, where they have an airstrip where they can fly planes in and out of the country. And this is why they have the Supermax prison in El Salvador. And this is why Guantanamo Bay was expanded. Because the first round of detainees that got picked up in Trump's first term have pretty much all been executed already, and those beds have been cleared. And now they're bringing in new high-level prisoners. And all this Democrat bullshit that we've been hearing, it's all starting to die down. And it's all going to die down. Letitia James is going to be awfully silent now because she got to go protect her own neck because she's getting indicted. And we're only hearing about her because she was all in the media attacking Trump. So she put the spotlight on herself. We don't know how many other local government officials are being picked up and disappearing. I mean, hell, how often do you see the government officials that live in your own town? So how would you know if they went missing if nobody said it? Right? Hold that thought. And this is why they need the world to hate Trump or they need America to hate Trump, because if they get the Americans to hate Trump, they'll never believe that Trump is actually doing the very thing that almost every American, whether they like Trump or not, he's doing the very thing that we all would want him to do, or we would want any president to do. Use the full force and power of the military and the federal government to go after corrupt politicians and domestic terrorists, round them all up and get them the fuck out of here. You see, they don't want people to know that Trump's actually doing that shit. So they need you to believe that Orange Man bad, and Orange Man he's one of them. He's down with them. He's playing ball with them. He's on their team. Excuse me. That's just because this is what you're being shown. This is what you're being told. This is what you're able to see and what you're able to discern for yourself. But like I said, you might see the ripples on the surface of the water, but still have absolutely no idea what the fuck's really going on beneath the surface of that water. You feel me? Hell, how you even going to know to discern what's happening beneath the surface of the water if you don't even know you're on water? How about that? How about that? So the entire deep state is going down, and I believe this is the final round. Now, just to double down on what I said about the Special Operations Unit, JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, I believe, is the task force that is working with the National Guard and the feds to crack down on these domestic terrorists and deport these illegals. The Joint Special Operations Command collaborates with various agencies, including the Department of Justice, primarily through its Special Operations Division, which focuses on dismantling drug trafficking and money laundering organizations. This partnership enhances coordination and effectiveness in addressing significant criminal threats. You hear that? Drug trafficking, primarily through its Special Operations Division, which focuses on dismantling drug trafficking and money laundering organizations. You see that? Drug trafficking, money laundering, right? Let's see here. Here. Trafficking. So here, sanctuary cities were never about immigrants. They were foreign control nodes for trafficking. That would be human trafficking and drug trafficking, because the human traffickers use the same routes and methods to smuggle people as they do with their drugs. cartel logistics, money laundering, and proxy warfare inside U.S. borders. And what does JSOC deal with? JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, they deal with drug trafficking and money laundering organizations. And these drug trafficking organizations deal with human trafficking as well. These money laundering organizations, well, they deal with organizing domestic terrorists because they have to use laundered money. So it's the Joint Special Operations Command. And I mentioned the Joint Special Operations Command being used domestically by the Trump administration in several streams that you can find on Rumble from 2022, 2023, and possibly back in 2021 as well. So just because you hear National Guard, you think a bunch of Elmer Fuds that are fat and overweight and only train what is it? 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. Yeah, those are your guys that'll be, your regular army guys that'll be on the street, hanging out, chilling, stopping criminals or preventing crime or whatever they do. But then you got the Special Operations Division, which is the guys that go kick indoors at night. Jeffrey B., how can you send me information? All right. Well, you could find me on Instagram as citizen_man1218, but you can also send me an email, or if the information you have is in links, you can leave a comment in the comment section of the video after the stream is over, not in the live chat, but in the comment section. But I have an email address. It's citizenman87@gmail.com, and it's in the description box, so you'll be able to find it. People email me shit all the time. So let's continue. So yes, the Special Operations Division is who's deploying with the National Guard. They're the guys that are doing those raids and snatch and grabs and, extracting these people. This partnership enhances coordination and effectiveness in addressing significant criminal threats. And what was the reason for Trump deploying the military? Significant criminal threats? Was that the language that he actually used? I'm curious now. Let me see. I want to hold on. I need to see something. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. I need to see some shit. Let's just share the entire screen. I just want to see something. See if I'm right about something. What was the terminology? Significant criminal threats. Trump address significant criminal threats. Let's see what we find. Since taking office in 2025, President Trump has repeatedly addressed crime and threats to public. Okay, so that's crime and threats. Trump takes credit for dropping crime rate. Trump and FBI Director Patel tout crime fighting. Countering domestic terrorism and organized political. Oh, this is from the White House. So this is from the White House, September 25th, 2025. Right? Countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. That sounds like a significant criminal threat, doesn't it? 45-47, that would be Trump. Hold on. I just clicked on something stupid. Oh, 45-47, this is Trump. Countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. I just want to See how long this document is because these are pretty long sometimes. Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna have to study this because this looks like it's got some shit in it. I don't know how to get rid of that tab there though. This looks like some shit. JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, is what I think that is. All right. So let's read a little bit. National Security Presidential Memorandum. That's NSPM 7. Memorandum for the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Treasury, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. See, I didn't say United States. That's the constitutional republic right there. United States of America. I hereby direct the following. Section 1. Domestic terrorism and organized political violence, heinous assassinations, and other acts of political violence in the United States have dramatically increased in recent years, even in the aftermath of the horrifying assassination of Charlie Kirk. Some individuals who adhered to the alleged shooter's ideology embraced and cheered this evil murder while actively encouraging more political violence. This was preceded by the 2024 assassination of a senior healthcare executive and the 2022 assassination attempt against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Two separate assassination attempts against my own life in less than 3 months took place during the 2024 presidential election cycle. Riots in Los Angeles and Portland reflect more than 1,000% increase in attacks on U.S. immigration and customs enforcement officers, that'll be ICE, since January 21st, 2025. Compared to the same period last year, just yesterday, a school shooting targeting an ICE facility targeting an ICE facility in Dallas resulted in multiple casualties. Separate anti-police and criminal justice riots have left many people dead and injured and inflicted over $2 billion in property damage nationwide. Wow. Energy law enforcement disband, uproot networks, entities, organizations. Okay. The United States, so this just goes over like all the shit that they were doing. But look at the verbiage that's used, right? Check this out. This political violence is not a series of isolated incidents and does not emerge organically. Instead, it is a culmination of sophisticated, organized campaigns of targeted intimidation. The word campaign, that's a war word. Let's see. These campaigns begin by isolating and dehumanizing specific targets to justify murder or other violent action against them. They do so through a variety of fora, including anonymous chat forums, in-person meetings, social media, and even educational institutions. These campaigns then escalate to organized doxing, where private or identifying information of their targets, such as home addresses, phone numbers, or other personal information, is exposed to the public, with the explicit intent of encouraging others to harass, intimidate, or violently assault them. And he goes on to talk about the ICE officers being doxxed. But here, these campaigns, this is war terminology. The United States requires a national strategy to investigate and disrupt network entities and organizations that foment political violence so that law enforcement can intervene in criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts. Criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts. Interesting. Which means once the Charlie Kirk incident happened, all the intel switches were turned on and they know exactly who they're going after. And that's why Trump deployed the military where he did, when he did. Through this comprehensive strategy, law enforcement will disband and uproot networks, entities, and organizations that promote organized violence, violent intimidation, conspiracies against rights, and other efforts to disrupt the functioning of a democratic society. The National Joint, Section 2, investigating domestic terrorist organizations. The National Joint Terrorism Task Force, you see, remember what I told you about the war on terror? This is what's allowing Trump to use military resources domestically. The National Joint Terrorism Task Force and its local offices, collectively JTTFs, shall coordinate and supervise comprehensive national strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation designed to suppress lawful political activity or obstruct the rule of law. This strategy shall include the investigatory and prosecutorial measures set forth in this section. The JTTF shall investigate potential federal crimes related to acts of recruiting or radicalizing persons for the purpose of political violence, terrorism, or conspiracy against rights, or the violent deprivation of any citizen's rights. The JTTF shall also investigate institutional and individual funders and officers and employees of organizations that are responsible for, sponsor, or otherwise aid and abet the principal actors engaging in criminal conduct described in subsection A and B of this section. So, institutional and individual funders. Remember the what's his name? Khalil Muhammad or whatever the hell his name was, the guy that got deported from Columbia University, and he was supposed to be the pro-Palestinian protester, who I believe is an Israeli spy posing as a Palestinian protester. He was investigated and he was deported out of the country. So it seems like the JTTFs were active long before the Charlie Kirk incident, and the Charlie Kirk incident, which would be another reason why Charlie would have faked his death, the Charlie Kirk incident was basically the trigger event to initiate this same, what's the word? To expand this operation from just those specific universities to entire cities across the country, mainly the sanctuary cities, because that's where these criminals are, because the sanctuary cities are not sanctuary for migrants, they're sanctuaries for criminals. Okay, so that doesn't specifically mention the significant criminal threats. But let's do one more thing. Let's see. Oh, gotta go here. Go to duckduckgo.com. Trump significant criminal threats. I want to see if there's any mention of that specific verbiage. Donald Trump has made over 100 threats to prosecute and punish perceived enemies. Okay. So they're playing the whole Trump is going after his political enemies game, just like I told y'all that they would do. Trump's retribution campaign. Trump ramps up threats against political foes. You see what I mean? Like, it's like exactly what I said they would do is literally what they're doing. But on a lighter note, judge responds to Diddy's request to serve sentence at Fort Dix. So Diddy has been sentenced and he's going to prison. He got a 4-year sentence, and I think he's going to get 2 years of time served. And he wants to serve his sentence at Fort Dix, of all places. Send me to Fort Dix, Judge, with an extra helping of baby oil, please. Fort Dix. It's a very I'm not sure why he would choose that specific prison. I don't know what's so special about Fort Dix or what they might have in abundance that Diddy could possibly want to be around at Fort Dix. Fort Dix. Now, why would Diddy want to serve his sentence at a place called Dix? I don't know. That's one to ponder on. That's food for thought. Food for thought. But anyway, we jumped the gun a little bit. We need to go to slide 5. So, even though Trump is doing everything that's necessary for the country, for some reason, there's this organized campaign to hate the man, no matter what he does. And this meme kind of basically demonstrates that perfectly. Trump cures cancer. And then these liberal motherfuckers that get paid to go protest are going to hold up signs saying curing cancer is racist. We have the right to die from our own cancer. Like, that's the level of stupidity that these people have gotten to. But the people that are organizing and funding these protests, not these useful idiots in the street, but the people that organize and fund these kinds of protests, they're not stupid and they know exactly what they're doing. But this is the type of stupid shit that they would get people to go do. And although this meme is fictional, let me be clear about that. It's just a fictional meme. It pretty much demonstrates what the Trump derangement syndrome looks like. But now we're getting a glimpse of behind the curtain of who's actually manipulating these victims of Trump derangement syndrome and what's becoming of them. The military's going after them. Portland PD, Portland Police Department, sides with Antifa terrorists and gives tips on how to avoid federal troops being allowed in the city and how to avoid arrests. So, over in Portland, they're going to try to do the same bullshit that they're trying to do in Chicago, which is impede federal officers from doing their legal and lawful duty. This is what they're going to do. And this is why, again, the local police departments cannot be utilized for these operations. Remember when Q said, let me X that out. We don't need that anymore. You remember when Q said military is the only way? This is why. Because you can't depend on the local PD. Because if the local mayor is an Antifa sympathizer, guess what? The police chief that the local mayor appoints would be an Antifa sympathizer. And if the police chief is an Antifa sympathizer, guess who else would be Antifa sympathizers? The officers that chief hires. So it's corrupt from the top down. So the military is going to come in. This is just an example. But why is Antifa such a threat? Well, here's one example of how evil they are. If I see any children dressed up in some MAGA type costume like this little worm, I'm going to be giving them my special fentanyl laced candy. Antifa action. So this person is actually threatening to kill children if their parents dare to put them in a MAGA hat. And of course, Halloween's coming up and kids are going to be going door to door collecting candy. This is not the way American politics has ever been done. Like there has always been with every president, people who supported the president and people who didn't support the president. But what we weren't doing, excuse me, what we weren't doing was threatening to kill each other's children. That's what we weren't doing. But for some reason, people feel like it's okay to threaten to kill other people's children. These Antifa people. That's because they're a they're a domestic terrorist organization and they're activating. They've gotten the green light to go to get violent. And again, how do you call the police on somebody like this when these people live in cities where the police side with the criminals? How do you Thank you, Trump, for sending in the military because now we have children's lives being threatened. So we literally have Americans out there who have been brainwashed by the Trump hate machine so much that they're willing to kill children over it. And this wouldn't be the first time. Remember the transgenital school shootings? Who did they target? Young children. So if you fall for the media bullshit, the media propaganda, and you believe the hype that Trump shouldn't be deploying the military to cities, or you believe those agent fearmongers who are out there telling you it's martial law, it's martial law. That's because they're in support of this shit. Whether they know it or not, this is the type of shit they're supporting because these are the types of people that the military is going after. And these are the types of people that the military should go after, domestic terrorists. Because I don't care if you agree with me or not. You don't have to agree with me on everything. But I won't wish death on you and I won't threaten your fucking kids' lives because I don't agree with your politics. But you see, they're being this vicious against Trump because Trump poses a bigger threat to their establishment than any other president. So under any other president, as long as the cash flow was allowed to happen and all the scams were allowed to go off without a hitch, nobody was getting mad enough to threaten anybody's life or take anybody's life for that matter over politics. Even though there were people on both sides of the aisle that disagreed with each other. But now, with the media propaganda through the Trump hate machine, and then the echoing of the anti-Trump propaganda on social media through the YouTube Trump hate machine, now we have a climate where you can't even dress your kid like the fucking president without putting their lives on the line. You cannot in America, you cannot dress your child like the president of America without some cocksucker, because that's what they are, a bunch of fags, some cocksucker out there threatening the life of your child. What have we become, America? Why can't we disagree but still respect the president or love America enough to respect the president? Well, that's because America has been infiltrated by foreign powers and foreign operatives. And it's these foreign powers and these foreign operatives that are influencing and funding these domestic terrorist groups that are engaging in this type of shit. Because as Americans, when it comes to shit like this, sure, we have our differences when it comes to the black versus white and the race stuff. Yeah, there's things in each group that we differ on, and there's things in each group that we don't like about each other, and things that we disagree with. But there's things that unite us together as well, like the content of our character. And in the name of good character, whether you like Trump or you hate Trump, in fact, it shows better character if you're somebody that just ultimately hates Trump, just the most Trump deranged syndrome ass motherfucker there is, but would stand up and say, "No, this is a child. We're not doing that. I don't like that orange motherfucker as much as you don't like that orange motherfucker. But if somebody else dresses their kid like that orange motherfucker, I'm not going to take it out on the fucking kid. I might punch his mom or his dad in the face for dressing him like that, but I'm not going to do anything to the damn kid. He's a kid. He's a baby." But again, the political left are the same ones that believe in abortion, so they already have a track record of blood sacrificing children in mass. So this is child's play to them, no pun intended. This is light work. But this is why the military's coming for their ass. This is why. So remember, I told you about Black Lives Matter not being a threat, right? Well, Black Lives Matter is cooked because there's supposed to be three fat black lesbians started Black Lives Matter to make money off the blood sacrifice of dead black men killed by the police. That's essentially what they did because none of these black men that were killed by the police could have reached out to any of these people that started and funded and profited off of Black Lives Matter. None of these men that were killed by the police could have reached out to any of these women. Hell, most of them couldn't reach out to their own damn families. Excuse me, I just had to yawn. But much yet any of these women to get any type of help so they wouldn't have the run-ins with the police that they had. But Black Lives Matter is now apparently owed money because they haven't been paid by their slave master. Black Lives Matter is suing Soros-backed Tides Foundation over missing $33 million. So apparently Black Lives Matter lost $33 million. They claim, I guess they're claiming they weren't paid $33 million, and they're suing the Soros-backed foundation to try to get their money, as if they didn't profit enough off the backs of the American people. But what's happening here, I believe, is these bitches are broke. They scam black folks for a whole year through 2020. Well, hell, for 5 years, from 2015 all the way through 2020, with all the dead black men at the hands of the police. And they made millions of dollars and didn't give a penny to any of the victims' families, but bought themselves beautiful $1 million ranch homes. How about that? So they're fucking cooked. And this is why Black Lives Matter isn't a threat, because that's who runs it. Now, when it comes to Antifa and their Transformer soldiers, those are men. They might be gay, sassy, broke-wristed ass men, but they're still males and they still possess that male aggression. So they pose more of a threat. But Black Lives Matter was basically a self-contained threat that's now imploding on itself. The National Black Lives Matter movement has filed a lawsuit claiming $33.4 million of its funds are being withheld by the Soros-backed Tides Foundation. Right. And again, this is what happens when you serve evil. You get promised, because the devil is a liar. So you get promised all these big promises, and then when it's time for the devil to fulfill his promise, he says, "Aha, I got you, bitch." And that's pretty much what the Tides Foundation did to Black Lives Matter. So they went out and did all that rioting and all that burning down of black businesses in the black community in the name of the Nazi collaborator George Soros. And now even their black asses are getting screwed by the Tides Foundation. Well, that's what you get for serving evil. There's no loyalty amongst thieves. And a thief of all people should know that, because Black Lives Matter stole millions of dollars from the American people. Now, Antifa being called a terrorist threat, it's not only because they are domestic terrorists, but they're actually an international organization that started in Europe as the Antifascista, and they still exist in Europe today. But the Antifascista are fighting on behalf of the fascist establishment. Fascism is the merger of state and corporate powers. So what do you call it when, I don't know, the Biden administration puts pressure on YouTube to ban content about the rigged election or the biological weapon vaccine, and YouTube complies with the president's orders? What do you call that? Isn't that the merger of state and corporate powers, where the state now determines what that corporation can and can't broadcast? That's fascism. But anyway, the left are fascists, and they are violent. Check this out. This lady right here, newly elected mayor Iris Stalzer, is in critical condition after being stabbed outside her home in Western Germany, with the motive still unknown. Yeah, Germany's a fucked up place, and any conservatives in Germany are in danger. Because if this woman was newly elected and then she gets stabbed, why did she get stabbed all the years before she got elected? Why, after she gets elected, she gets stabbed? But they don't know what a motive, they don't have a motive. The motive is still unknown. I think the motive is whatever side of the political aisle she was on, and I believe she was a conservative, the motive was political violence by the left. That's what the motive was. But Germany is one of those liberal pro-Antifa places too, just like Portland. So, of course, they're going to pretend that, they don't know. Political violence. That's what it is. Breaking. FBI Director Kash Patel said there's 110,000 gang members in Chicago. Wow. We learned that the Chicago city streets have 110,000 gang members. You heard me right. Holy shit. 110,000. And you see what Kash Patel said? We learned that the Chicago city streets, we learned. How did they learn it? Through their intel investigations. And meanwhile, while 110,000 gang members run the streets of Chicago that this man refuses to prosecute, Trump just said he will invoke the Insurrection Act if governors and mayors refuse to enforce the law. Well, here is Illinois governor flanked by Chicago mayor claiming they are going to drive ICE thugs out of Chicago. This is an actual insurrection. It damn sure is. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear from Pritzker or Brandon Johnson for any significant amount of time. Because, first of all, federal power trumps state power every time. So if you have people in your state committing federal crimes, the feds have a right to move in there and operate there. And every border jumper, because immigration law falls under federal law, every border jumper every border jumper is not only a criminal, but a federal criminal. And look who he calls thugs: immigration, custom, and enforcement. Not the illegals that are running around raping women and children and murdering people. No, 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 no. The federal officers that are tasked by the president to round these murderers, rape thieves, and rapists up and get them the fuck out of our country. Hang on a second. Yeah, the federal officers that are tasked with removing these actual thugs, well, they get called the thugs. They get characterized as the thugs. You want to talk about bought and paid for. And this shit looks green screened as fuck. Look at Pritzker, the outline of Pritzker's head. Doesn't that look like green screen to y'all? I don't know. The shadows are weird, but it could just be really good lighting. But let's continue. So I mentioned earlier about the government shutdown, right? And Trump's strategy behind the government shutdown: cut off the money to the illegals. And he also mentioned about cutting Democrat programs, the money to those NGOs and those 501c3s that are basically stealing tax money off the top. Well, here's another interesting one. The Brief report, Time magazine, Time the Brief reports CDC not functional after Trump administration orders mass firings. What? So the CDC is also shut down now, thanks to Trump letting the government shutdown happen. And who were the ones basically pushing the COVID narrative and the COVID rules to get everybody to gag themselves and then take the poison? It was the CDC, wasn't it? And now the CDC has been rendered not functional thanks to Trump and his antics. Hundreds of employees at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention were fired in a Friday night massacre that targeted departments related to respiratory disease, chronic diseases, and global health. Now, remember what I told you about the corrupt politicians that profit from the crime? Check this out. New York City Councilwoman Alethea Stephen. So, this is an elected official of New York City. Just asked the NYPD to delete their gang database because it's racist. And I don't even know if she's for real about this, but that's what she's up there saying. Delete the gang database because it's racist. Is it racist or because it's majority black people in the gang database, or is the majority of the gang bangers in your city black? or Latino? Which one is it? The gang database is racist. Couldn't tell you why it was racist. Just tells you it's racist. Mind you, by deleting the gang database, who does that endanger, ladies and gentlemen? Because without the gang database, when suspects get arrested, without the gang enhancements and the enhanced sentences, when suspects get arrested, they go to prison claiming that gang, and they usually end up getting hurt. You see, but now with the gang database, the gang enhancements mean something. So when these gangbangers get arrested and they're found to be known gangbangers, now they'll have a longer sentence hanging over their head. So when it's time to ride or go slide on the ops or whatever, they're going to think twice about that shit. But how is deleting an informational database about criminal activity, how's that racist? What would be racist would be letting these gangbangers go free so they can continue terrorizing the black community, because that's usually where they come from. And here's a black woman saying that the gang database in New York City is racist, right? Using that R word. But then Charlie Kirk was racist for saying, when he was asked about mass shootings, for asking the person questioning him, does that include gang violence? All the black people got mad and equated Charlie Kirk's gang violence comment to black people. You know what that tells me? That tells me that black people basically align themselves with gangbangers. So anything having to do with gangs or gang violence has to be black. But that wasn't what he was referring to. He was asked about, I guess, the numbers and the statistics of the mass shootings, and he wanted to know, well, what other elements, what other variables do I factor in? Do I factor in gang violence as mass shootings? Because gang violence a lot of times does fit the criteria for mass shootings, but isn't reported that way. That's what he should have said. So he was racist for bringing up gang violence, but this woman ain't racist for encouraging gang violence. She gets to call the people trying to stop gang violence, or policy trying to stop gang violence, racist. Ain't that something? Oh shit, what up, Miss Keita, DJ Spin, Rap Palace, what's going on, y'all? Super Wise Woman, what's happening? Who else have I not shouted out? I think that's everybody. All right, so let's continue on. Delete the gang database because it's racist. And again, these are not stupid people. These are actually quite intelligent people. But they're on the payroll, so they have to say this stupid shit. And I believe, and shout out to Angry Man for bringing this up, but I believe that all these Democrats have dirt on them, and that's why they're selected to push this propaganda, because as stupid as it sounds, they have two choices. Go out there and make a fool of yourself, make a monkey of yourself, or make a criminal of yourself, and we expose you, and we let your crimes be prosecuted by the Trump administration, who hates you anyway because he hates Democrats. The choice is yours. So, of course, they choose the option that doesn't involve going to jail. Now, the corrupt politicians ain't the only problem. Activist judges. Donald Trump's attorney, Alina Habba, just exposed Judge Arthur Engoron on her Telegram. He took a $10 million bribe from Joe Biden's shell companies to convict Donald Trump. And Engoron is the one that convicted Donald Trump in the, I believe it's the E. Jean Carroll case. No. Is it? It's the case where he was forced to pay the 450 something million dollars, which he only paid, I think, 75 million for the bond, and the case is still on appeal. So it's not even closed yet. But yeah, Engoron, that's that motherfucker just looks stink. That's that zombie judge. If you guys, for those of you who don't remember, but that judge, there's a video of him waking up, and he literally wakes up like this. This is how he wakes up, y'all. This is how he wakes up. Brains. That's how he wakes up. That's what he does. That's how he looks. Like he sleeps in a coffin, and then he wakes up like one of those Scooby-Doo zombies. That's him. That's Engoron. And now we know why he made that cockamamie judgment against Trump. Because he was paid to do it. They're all being paid. And you see, this is why they're all so mad at Trump, because all this shit's being exposed. Now think about this. How many innocent people was this man paid off to convict? How many innocent people was this man paid off to send to prison? If he'll take a bribe, he'll take a bribe. And that's another reason why they hate Trump so much, because Trump don't take no bribes. You can't bribe a billionaire. It's very hard to bribe a billionaire. You can only control a billionaire through threats. And the only way you can control a billionaire by way of threats is if he's a pussy ass motherfucker. And Trump is not no pussy ass motherfucker. So they can't pay him to they can't pay him to control him, and they can't threaten him to control him either. He's the goddamn president. He's got the full force of the military, and all those who were threatening trying to threaten him to control him by taking, attempts on his life and shit like that, sending death threats and all that shit. He's got the full force of the military behind him. So you people are fucked. Proper fucked. A federal judge has temporarily halted the Trump administration's plan to deploy 200 National Guard troops to Portland. And that's the judge right there. Judge Karen Emergit, appointed by Trump in 2019. Looks like a lesbian. Definitely a carpet muncher. And she looks like one of those Antifa goons. She got that crazy look in her eye. And she was appointed by Trump. Can't even trust the people in your own circle, because you're in a world of fucking snakes. Now, speaking of being in a world of snakes, Letitia James. Oh, man. That fat pig. Letitia James. So the last report I did on Letitia James, she was under investigation for possible mortgage fraud. This is NBC News headline, by the way. But now, grand jury indicts New York Attorney General Letitia James, a Trump opponent, on bank fraud charges. It's actually mortgage fraud charges, like I said earlier, but she's been indicted. Just like when I told you she was being investigated, the indictment was coming. Well, here it is. Mortgage fraud. Now, what she did, what the crime was she bought this bullshit property down in is it Norfolk, Virginia, for $137,000. Little hood shotgun house, and she bought it with a loan that was only designated for homeowners who were purchasing a home as their own personal residence, whether it be a primary or a secondary residence. And because of the stipulations of the loan, she had to put on the documentation when she purchased the property, or when she got approved for the loan, or when she applied for the loan, that this property that she was purchasing was going to be her second home. And so she got approved. She got good income, good credit, whatever. She got approved for the mortgage. But the problem is, she then took that property that she told the lender was going to be a personal residence of hers. She then took the property and rented it to two of her nieces, one of whom, well, we'll get to that, to two of her nieces. So it turns out that she was using the property as a rental property when she actually got a loan for it as a primary residence. And you can't lie and say that it's your primary residence to get the loan benefits while simultaneously planning to use it as a rental property, because that is fraud. Shout out to Elsine. Elsine says, excellent show as always. Thank you, Elsine. So she used the property as her primary residence. I mean, she got the loan for the property as if it was a primary residence, and now she's been indicted for mortgage fraud because she used it as a rental property. Now, where it gets interesting is Angry Man 4 days ago did a breakdown on it, and he showed a video clip of some reporters going to the property to ask them about the occupants of the property about Letitia James. And there was a black woman living there with her kids. And Angry Man said this has to be a relative of hers that she's doing a favor for, right? And it turns out that Angry Man was absolutely correct. Where is that other slide? Here it is. Angry Man was absolutely correct. Letitia James's niece, who lives in Virginia, in the Virginia home James lied to get a mortgage for, is actually a fugitive from justice, wanted on multiple criminal warrants. So here's the interesting thing, because there might be some added charges to Letitia James's indictment. Because of the mortgage fraud, the property was investigated to see who was living there, and saw that someone else other than Letitia James was living there. And this woman that's living there claimed to not be paying rent, but whether she wasn't or not, that is her primary residence, not Letitia James's primary residence. So Angry Man was speculating that Letitia James got this property to help out a family member in need of a place to stay, because a lot of times you have family members that have bad credit or criminal history and can't pass a background check or qualify based on bad credit for a rental home, to rent a house. So Letitia James helped this family member out by buying this house, committing mortgage fraud to make it as beneficial for herself as possible, and renting it out to her niece. But it turns out that she might be charged with harboring a fugitive. And technically, her niece is an absconder, where she has criminal charges in North Carolina. And she was put on probation in North Carolina, and she fled to Virginia to escape probation. And she left Virginia to escape probation in 2020. Oddly enough, Letitia James purchased the same house in 2020. So it's quite possible that Letitia James aided her in escaping justice by telling her, well, if you jump across the state lines to Virginia, I got a house over there you can live in, and North Carolina won't come get you because the crimes that you're supposed to be doing probation for are misdemeanors and they're not serious felonies, so they won't come after you. And I believe Angry Man's assessment is spot on. And I believe that because of this situation, Letitia James is going to be charged with aiding and abetting to some degree. And this is federal because she helped her jump states. So it's another federal charge. Because based on the mortgage fraud charge alone, Letitia James is looking at about 60 years in prison. 60, not 6 or 16, 60. It's a lot of fucking time. Now you add on the charge of aiding and abetting to that, you're looking at a cool 80 to 100. And I said this before, and I'll say it again because I said this about Fannie Willis when she got in her bunch of shit after she decided to go after Trump. You should have left well enough alone. You should have left Trump the fuck alone, Letitia James. You should have left Trump alone because had you left Trump alone, nobody would have felt the need to investigate your ass. And it's funny, a CNN reporter recently came out in defense of Letitia James and said, what'd she say? Everybody committed mortgage fraud, as if this is something that just happens every day. No, I think everybody who is saying that this mortgage fraud is no big deal, I think they should be investigated too. Because I'm pretty sure when Letitia James committed mortgage fraud to get this property to harbor her fugitive niece or grandniece or whatever the hell she is, I don't think she felt like she would ever get caught. I think she felt like she would get away with it because she's the New York State Attorney General, for Christ's sakes. And the latest update in the Letitia James saga is she was forced to resign from her position as New York State Attorney General in light of the indictment. And I think she's also throwing her hat in the ring to run for mayor of New York City. And I hope she's stripped of that opportunity too, because the last thing we need running our cities, like we don't have enough of it already, is criminals, scammers, and thieves. I don't think we want that. I sure as hell don't want that. Okay, that's the vaccine stuff. We don't have to get into that. Now, before I close out, to China and Israel thing. China announces that Palestine will be included in BRICS as part of efforts to support its development. Interesting, because I thought Trump was taking over Palestine, Gaza, that is. But here we have China inducting Palestine into the BRICS nations. And this comes right on the heels of Trump forcing Israel to make that peace deal. And now that Israel has made that peace deal, the BRICS nations are going to be allied with Palestine, which means if Israel attacks Palestine, Israel is attacking BRICS, and they will have to answer to Russia and China. And funny enough, about a week ago, I saw a headline where China, because Israel has been basically sinking ships that were trying to bring, or boats trying to bring aid into Gaza, like food and stuff to Gaza, China decided that they were going to step in and start shipping aid into Gaza, and they threatened Israel and said, "We will delete you from existence if you touch any of our humanitarian shipments to Gaza." And when I saw that headline, something in my heart says, Israel, please sink one of those Chinese boats. Please sink one of those Chinese boats so Xi Jinping could level your asses. Please. And if I'm not mistaken, this might actually be the play to end Israel. Because while Trump is up there playing grab ass with Netanyahu, right? He's saving face with the Zionist lobby here in America and the Mossad hit squads that are still operating while the military is going after all the hit squads, right? But at the same time, Trump allowed the BRICS nations to set up their own international power structure because he did not do what previous presidents did, which was any Middle Eastern or African country switching from the dollar to a gold backed currency was destabilized through military action. Excuse me. Under Trump, he didn't do any of that. He allowed these countries to switch from the dollar to a gold-backed currency, thus allowing BRICS to build to build up their own presence on the international trade markets. So now BRICS is all powerful. And while Trump's playing grab ass with Netanyahu, let's say Israel does do exactly what I hope they do, which is fuck around and attack a Chinese ship, and China comes in and levels Israel, even though Trump allowed it to happen, Trump can't be blamed for it because China did it. And the United States is not going to risk war with China. And after China is done leveling Israel, that's when Trump's going to step in and make a peace deal with China. But basically, why was the anti-Trump movement started in the first place? It's pretty simple. The system was set up in such a way where bad actors could game the system and profit from the problems that the rest of us have to suffer from. And when Trump came into power came into office in 2016, he started exposing the very same corruption that these politicians were profiting from and their cohorts in the media were ultimately benefiting from as well. So they needed to turn the American people against Trump because too many people supported Trump. And with that many people supported Trump, the only way they could beat him through election fraud would be to fake a scamdemic, destroy the economy, blame Trump, and then do ballot harvesting, illegal ballot harvesting, just to win an election. Which means Trump is too popular of an individual and too powerful of a force for the ruling elites to contend with. So they have to demonize him. They have to kill him. They have to try to kill him. They have to get as many people as possible to not listen to him. And they do that by making people hate him. And the reason for that is because when they run the next candidate for president, anybody but Trump would look better. But they hate Trump because he's destroying their system that they've been living off of all their careers, all their adult lives, pretty much. He's returning power to the people, which means they can't enslave us anymore. Our votes actually count now. And like Divine Gun said, Sanchez said, Trump puts money in people's pockets, and he want to put money in our pockets, but he can't do it with all these illegals running around. Can't do it with all these gangbangers and criminals and human traffickers running around. So while Trump is out in these big cities cleaning up the streets and using special ops to clean up these organizations and these networks, he's in DC preparing to send out that emergency message because people are going to get arrested. And they might get arrested by the military. So Trump's upsetting the balance. Trump is disrupting their cash flow. And not only that, he's investigating and bringing real criminals to justice. So the purpose for the anti-Trump movement is to make way for the anti-American international Masons that want to push communism and international law on U.S. soil. And we ain't having it. And apparently neither is Trump. So there's that. So anyway, guys, before I wear myself out any further, please make sure you go subscribe to the Citizen Man Business channel. Follow me over on Rumble and check out those older Rumble streams. There's a lot of good information in it. If you love the shows that I've been doing recently, you can go back to Rumble and see how consistent I've been. This is nothing new. This is what I do. But my numbers were much bigger on YouTube back then. So, my confidence level was a little higher. But we're getting back to it. We're getting back there. We're putting in the work. You know what I'm saying? Get yourself a copy of the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies, Metabolic Cooking, and Anabolic Cooking. And, of course, last but not least, if you guys would like to support the show, you can do so by sending in a kind donation via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo by using the tag scrolling across the screen in the banner below. I know why I ain't been getting that many Cash Apps. I forgot to do this one thing. Yes, that's right. Pin my links. So I'm going to pin them now in case there were any of you out there that wanted to support and donate to the show, but you couldn't find the links. The links are in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And I'm going to pin them right here to the top of the chat as soon as I get my cursor to start working right. Boom. The links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat in the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow, just click the yellow, the box opens up and all the links are visible. You can also find these links in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And I want to give a big shout out to my 5 supporters for the night. I usually aim for 10 supporters, but I guess 5 would do. Shout out to my brother Keith, D. Allen, my brother Devin, sister Cynthia, and sister Elsine. Well, Elsine, are you a brother or a sister? I'm not even sure anymore, but Elsine definitely sounds like a female's name. Haitian, perhaps. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm way off. Maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But anyway, I do appreciate you guys being here, and I appreciate the support. Oh, my brother Frank on the PayPal. I did have one PayPal that came in like days ago. So let me shout out my brother Frank on the PayPal. Let me not forget, because Frank be supporting. Make sure I still got that comment in there. Maybe I could read it to y'all. Oh, come on, PayPal with this stupid shit. Gotta text me a code and all this dumb shit. All right. And we are in. Oh, my brother Frank says, thanks, bro. I appreciate that, Frank. Appreciate that support. So, guys, it is 2:30 in the morning. And we are coming up on 3.5 hours. Where are we at right now? Yep, 3 hours and 24 minutes. So before I go any longer and stretch this out any further, I don't think there's any more. Elsine is Scots French, and I'm a lady. Ah, okay. Okay. See, I was right. Elsine is a feminine name. I knew it. Thank you, Elsine, for clearing that up. I appreciate that. Anyway, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the love and the support. You guys have been awesome. And I'll see you on the next show. Citizen Man, out. I hope what I said made sense for you tonight. I hope you guys, I hope you guys were able to follow along pretty well. So, see you on the next one. Sorry I was missing for so long. I'll try to be more active and at least drop community posts when I'm not going live for long spans like that, cuz definitely didn't plan on the last 2 weeks playing out the way that they did, but I had to get laser focused and get shit back in order. So, full night's sleep was important. Now I can sacrifice a few hours. So, and as we roll deeper into the winter, I might start doing daytime shows because it gets real cold in the studio at night, and daytime might be a little better. But anyway, and I have more time during the day to do it. So keep that in mind. So see you guys on the next one. Citizen Man, do my salute correctly. Citizen Man, out.